When I returned before the apocalypse, the first thing I did was use my six-pack abs to lure my sister-in-law into the room. Everyone cursed me as a beast, no more, no less, but no one knew that I did it to save her. Only I knew that the apocalyptic firestorm was imminent, and the global temperature would rise by 1,000 degrees. Millions of monsters lying dormant beneath the earth will awaken, and humans will also become monsters who devour each other. The survivors will kill one another over resources. Even a single pack of instant noodles will be enough to make people fight to the death. A corn dog can turn a once-high goddess into a man's plaything. What is most important on the day of the apocalypse? Of course, it's resources. In my previous life, I wasted most of my time searching for resources. This time, I must prepare in advance. Being 20 seconds late to work cost me half a day's pay. In my previous life, when the apocalypse came, my boss had already fled. In this life, let me gather all the resources. With a wave of my hand, a space formed from green energy appears right before my eyes. All the food, cooking oil, and meat were automatically collected. That is my special ability space. It has greatly facilitated my cost-free shopping. Moreover, the resources in the space can remain fresh forever. Finally, I no longer have to eat dirt like I did in my previous life. When I started inventorying the resources in the space, the warehouse manager suddenly pushed the door open. The scene before them left them stunned. "Oh my, why is the warehouse empty?" they exclaimed. Then they questioned me. Where did all of these things go? Hearing that, I simply smiled gently. It was obvious that I had taken everything. The three of them suddenly became furious and rushed at me, intending to catch me, but I quickly retreated, and in the blink of an eye, I had vanished. Seeing this, the three were left standing in shock. Huh, where did he go? At that moment, I had already jumped out of the warehouse through the space. This skill allows me to move within any space within a 3-meter radius. With this ability, during the apocalypse, I can freely collect resources from various buildings. Facing powerful mutated beasts, I can still protect my life. Today's cost-free shopping spree ends here. Just then, the phone in my pocket suddenly vibrated. The government knows that the apocalypse is imminent, but to avoid causing panic among the populace, they lied, claiming it was merely a geological phenomenon causing natural disasters. At that moment, the goddess Zhang Xiaojian suddenly called me. How dare you leave the house sale hanging? Do you think any woman would still want to be with you after selling your house? I'll give you one more chance. Transfer the house to me immediately, or you can forget about ever marrying me. As soon as I heard this, I immediately turned off the device. In my past life, I served her for 80 long years, only for her to waltz into my home with her boyfriend, stabbing me without a second thought. She not only robbed me of all my resources, but treated me like I was nothing. To make matters worse, she publicly humiliated me to the point of death. Now that I'm alive once more, I swear to repay the pain I've endured 100-fold. The resources I need next will have to be purchased with money. Thus, I quickly dialed the number of Director Liu from the real estate company. However, Zhang Xiaojian and her lover were already waiting at the brokerage's door. As soon as I got out of the taxi, he unleashed a torrent of curses at me. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting here? Yet, I chose to ignore him and strode confidently into the store. Seeing this, the man brandished a baseball bat to block my path, threatening me. You dare to sell our house? I swear I'll kill you right here. To my surprise, before he could finish his threat, I effortlessly lifted him up and slammed him hard against the ground. Zhang Xiaojian, that wretched woman, tried to rush to his aid, but I swiftly turned and slapped her across the face. Stunned, Zhang Xiaojian looked at me, incredulous. How dare you hit me? In response, I merely chuckled coldly. What of it I'm hitting both of you? Remember, this is my house, and how I choose to deal with it is none of your business. You have no right to dictate what happens here. At this point, Zhang Xiaojian had regained her composure and was exuding arrogance. You better kneel and apologize before I get angry, or you'll never have a chance to marry me. But what I gave them in return was nothing but a gaze filled with lethal intent. Instantly, the couple turned and fled. Before they left, they didn't forget to leave a threat behind. Just wait and see. Inside the company, Director Liu approached me immediately with a polite demeanor. Little brother, How much do you want to sell for? I only requested half the market value of the house. Hearing this, Director Liu smirked slyly. This house is worth over $1 million, and this foolish kid is selling it for just $700,000. It's an easy way to turn a profit of several $100,000. However, I insisted that full payment be made today and all at once. Compared to the resources in a post-apocalyptic world, this amount was trivial. Moments later, the $700,000 was swiftly transferred. Yet this sum was merely a drop in the bucket for the reserves needed for the end of days. I had to think of ways to earn even more money. Just then, I spotted an ad for a loan on a telephone pole on the side of the road. I needed to figure out how to make a lot of money first before I could tackle anything else. So, I headed to a mortgage company. However, Mr. Wang Dahai from the company informed me the maximum amount you can borrow is $500,000, and you need to place the property deed here first. Without hesitation, I laid the deed down on the table. I need $600,000 right now. It'll pay back both the principal and interest. Upon hearing this, Mr. Wang Dahai's eyes lit up with understanding. This kid must be a gambler. Once he's caught up in this, he'll sell even his own mother just to recover his funds. Let's see how I can make you pay. Without a moment's hesitation, he transferred the $600,000 into my account. Next, I headed to the finest 10-star hotel in the city. In my previous life, most buildings had crumbled before the catastrophe. Only the Lucheng Hotel stood strong until the end. From now on, this place would become my base, not a bad choice. Although it had stockpiled plenty of resources, there wasn't a single hot meal inside. So I went straight to the restaurant manager and told him that I wanted to order 1,000 banquet tables. As soon as I said that, the restaurant manager was immediately surprised, but still presented the banquet table standards. I immediately placed an order for 1,000 tables and mentioned that I could pay a 500,000 yuan deposit up front. Hearing this, he led me inside to take the deposit, already thinking of me as a wealthy heir. So he immediately had the idea of wanting to build a connection with me. Then he smiled and asked, "Mr. Su, are you preparing for a wedding?" "Yes, it's for the wedding." "By the way, book me a presidential suite as well," I replied. After that, I left the hotel in a relaxed mood. As for the remaining balance, in the abyss of fire, even a single piece of ice is worth billions. But not long after I left, Jiang Xiaojian and her lover found the restaurant manager and claimed that he was my boyfriend. "What was he doing here?" she demanded. The restaurant manager glanced at them. "This woman doesn't even have half my aura," he thought. "Why do the rich nowadays prefer this type brothing?" Despite his thoughts, he still told them about my order for 1,000 banquet tables. Upon hearing this, the couple was stunned. How could that poor guy possibly have 10 million? They wondered in disbelief. Seeing their displeasure, the restaurant manager immediately showed them a photo of the deposit I had made earlier. Could it be that Su Shen is actually a hidden wealthy heir? They wondered, their minds racing. They began to imagine that Su Shen was orchestrating all of this to create a grand fairy tale surprise for the wedding, a scene straight out of a magical story. Unexpectedly, they would have to carry out their plans on Su Shen, who they considered nothing more than a slave. Back home, Su Shen began to calculate his finances. After deducting the previous expenses, there were still 800,000 yuan left in his account. Clearly, this amount wasn't enough to purchase the necessary resources for the apocalypse. At this moment, if I didn't take out a loan, I'd really be doing myself a disservice. After a series of swift actions, the balance in my account instantly increased by 970,000 yuan. I now had the money to buy the necessary resources for the apocalypse. There was no time to waste. With this in mind, I immediately got to work. Items like heaters, ice makers, everything that the supermarket didn't have, I ordered online. Whether I could survive after the apocalypse would depend on these resources. So, I placed a deposit of 500,000 yuan to order 2,000 tons of dry ice and then contacted the ice factory to place the order. However, the factory required me to come in person to discuss the details. When I stepped into the ice factory, I immediately ran into Jiang Xiaojian and her best friend. In my previous life, they were the ones who badmouthed me behind my back and took over my house. Seeing them now, I immediately lost interest. I was about to leave when Zhang Xiaojian grabbed my arm. Upon realizing that I was a hidden wealthy heir, her attitude completely changed, and she began apologizing to me profusely. She even asked me to go shopping with her, but I didn't hold back and refused outright. Those two fools thought I was just playing hard to get and quickly called a taxi to follow me. Shortly after, I arrived at the Ronghua ice factory. After chatting for a while, the factory director assured me that there would be 2,000 tons of ice ready within 2 days. However, a deposit of 100,000 was required first. The following day, the goods would be delivered, and the remaining payment would be settled. Upon receiving the 100,000 deposit, the owner couldn't wipe the grin off his face. "Mr. Shi, buying so much ice, is it for a grand event? If there's a collaboration in the future, we could negotiate the price." Hearing this, I merely smiled. I was preparing to take it for charity in Lhasa. But just as I was about to leave, Zhang Xiaojun and her lover approached the factory director. Upon learning that I had ordered 800,000 blocks of ice, they were utterly shocked. This further confirmed their suspicions that Chen was undoubtedly a wealthy recluse. When they discovered that the ice would be used for charity in Lhasa, their astonishment only deepened. After preparing all the resources, I returned to the hotel, taking a moment to indulge in the luxurious life. However, upon glancing at the menu, I was taken aback. What a dish priced at an astronomical 17,000 DAT. After the waiter introduced the offerings, I learned that every dish was prepared directly by a Michelin chef. What exactly that entails, it depends on how they showcase it. I find it truly fascinating, so I decided to give it a try. After a brief wait, a girl with long pink hair approached, carrying dishes in her hands. From her words, I learned she was the chef of this restaurant, and the meal had been crafted specifically for me, tailored to my essence. Hearing this, I looked up, and to my surprise, it was her, the one once dubbed the Hell's Exorcist, Duan Kai. In this post-apocalyptic world, her culinary skills had the power to transform the mundane into the extraordinary. No one could resist the allure of the elegance she exuded. Yet, these dishes were concocted from elements altered within the body, posing real danger. Noticing my apprehension, Duan Yi immediately laughed awkwardly. "Are you afraid that I, a beauty, would poison your meal?" In response, I remained silent, quietly observing. If the apocalypse were truly upon us, who could know what toxins lurked within this food? After finishing my meal, I planned to visit the Century Bar for some entertainment. After all, this was the paradise for the extravagant. Some had spent millions without ever touching a woman. Yet, in just a few days, such vibrant places would cease to exist. Luckily, before the end arrived, I could still experience it once, nothing to regret. While conversing, I overheard her reveal that she had come here to drown her sorrows after being betrayed by her lover. She even exclaimed, "Not letting me sleep, yet he betrayed me." Isn't it perplexing how guys care so much about sleeping with women? After saying this, she downed her drink and slammed the cup onto the table. Then she asked me if I was single. I simply replied with an "aha," and she moved closer. "So, do you want to spend a wonderful night with me?" Just then, my two friends showed up. "Sao Sothun, are you daring to chase after women outside?" Instantly, I wrapped my arms around her. "I want to." Saying that, I took her hand and dashed upstairs. My two friends were hot on our heels, unwilling to let go. I pulled her up to the second floor, but I was quicker, yanking her into a room. I quickly locked the door, holding her tightly in my embrace. She shyly mentioned that this was her first time. Hearing that made me feel a bit awkward. Soon after, a light slap landed on my face. "You've been drinking too much. I am a principled person, not one to go astray." Out of kindness, I advised her that during these days, it's best not to go out and to stock up on some food. Although rejecting her left me with a twinge of regret, with my infatuated heart, I wasn't inclined to frequent places like this. Moreover, there was no future in it. I then slammed the door shut. As I stepped outside, I found the two girls searching for me, inch by inch. Even if I wanted to be with her tonight, their presence made it nearly impossible. In the blink of an eye, morning arrived. The items I ordered began arriving one by one. The couple brought their friends along, drawn in by the aroma. "Sothun, what on earth are you planning, Williams?" But when they saw the banquet table and the red carpet laid out, their fantasies started to soar. They assumed I was doing this to propose to her. Just because you propose doesn't mean she'll say yes. This would depend on how you present yourself. Then, Zhang Tuthin approached and asked what I had prepared all these things for. I merely shot her a glance, choosing not to respond. If you want to know, first help me get these items. Sothun, are you joking? I, Zhang Tuthin, never do heavy chores. At that moment, a close friend beside her reminded, Sothun is testing you to see if you're worthy of being a millionaire's wife. Hearing this made Zhang Tuthin blush. It's fine, Sothun. I'm not the type of woman who fusses over appearances. To succeed, one must be capable. If I can pass Sothun's challenge today, a grand proposal is certain to follow. Her friend looked at me with shyness. Sothun, please let me help too. Believing that rich girls like men, even if I didn't become a millionaire's wife, being a little darling would be just fine. At this moment, Sothun merely smiled. Free labor shouldn't be passed up. With so many items, even if the producer sent someone over, it would take forever to move everything. We were busy from dawn until sunset, completing just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Zhang Tuthin was so exhausted that she was panting heavily. Damn it, I'm the only one working and haven't even had a bite to eat. When I marry you, you must turn all your money into mine. Her friend was so worn out she could barely stand. Chen, that scoundrel, dared to make me work like a beast of burden. That chunk of ice weighs at least over 100 pounds. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiaoshan is still dreaming of becoming a lady. Everything has been moved. It's time for you to propose to me. Don't you think wealthy guests should be arriving soon, but they're not getting the outcome they desire? I've already rewarded the driver and the workers with 10,000 each. The remaining amount will be supplemented as per the contract within a week. Oh, what a generous boss. Zhang Xiaoshan, exhausted, leaned against the doorframe, swaying slightly. Hey, Chen, at this hour, have you forgotten something? Hearing that, I lazily glanced at her. Ah, right. If you hadn't mentioned it, I would have almost forgotten. Thank you all for your help. If there's nothing else, you can head home now. Upon finishing, Zhang Xiaoxian immediately panicked. Chen, don't joke with me. You've prepared so much, surely it's not just to propose to me. Bring the guests out, we shall wed and live happily ever after. After saying that, I bluntly replied, what wedding? I've sold my house and am drowning in debt just to buy these things. If you want to, it's not impossible. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaoshan was so furious that her face turned red. How can that be? With over 10 million in banquet expenses and tens of thousands in living costs, how could you be broke? So that's what you meant. All of this is merchandise prepared for a relief operation by a big shot. It will be sent to Alashan later. I'm just here to lend a hand. After this explanation, Zhang Xiaoxian erupted in rage, unable to hide her ugly expression. You scumbag, so you've been deceiving me from the start. After saying this, she rushed at me with an angry face, but I simply sidestepped and coldly remarked, then tell me, what have I deceived you about? Instantly, Zhang Xiaoxian stumbled and fell to the ground. Chen, you scoundrel. You're clearly not from a wealthy family. Don't even think about marrying me. Hearing this, I looked at her with disdain. Who would want a pragmatic girl like you? Even if you were free, I wouldn't need you. After that, Zhang Xiaoshan was so furious, she looked like she was about to explode. Chen, you will pay for what you've done today. With that, she turned and left, while her friend pointed at me. Chen, this time you're definitely going to face trouble. Those two foolish girls won't go easy on you until the end of days. After that, I locked the storeroom tight. All the supplies were ready. Now, all that's left is to wait for the apocalypse to arrive. I quickly stored all the goods into my space. In the blink of an eye, it was evening. After I turned down that couple, they were clinging to Wang Dahai all day. Sister Qian, Chen dares to treat you like this. You should break up with him soon. I'll make sure Wang Ge teaches him a lesson. Coincidentally, while having a meal, I witnessed the whole scene. This girl really can't tell the difference. She can swallow anything whole. At the same time, that couple has also discovered my presence. This guy is the one who laid hands on me. Seeing me, Wang laughed lightly. It turns out I've found you, just as I was looking for you. I didn't expect you to dare to touch my brother. This fool has always been like this, and now he owes 600,000. Tomorrow is the day to settle up. Jiang Shaoxian, the one who has been wronged, couldn't help but tease. Xiao Wang, you will definitely never repay that debt in this lifetime. Luckily, you have nothing to do with him. Hearing this, I wiped my mouth. Even a meal isn't peaceful. Tomorrow, that kid must pay, and you're still here having fun. You surely don't see me, Wang Dahai, as anything worthwhile, do you? Don't tell me you think you can earn 600,000 tonight. As soon as he finished speaking, the pampered dog immediately shouted, You can't earn anything, Wangi. Don't waste your time with him, just handle him. Just then, the restaurant manager approached, saying, Take it easy, don't cause a ruckus. Otherwise, I'll give you a chance. Right now, if this kid kneels down and apologizes to my brother, everything will be fine. The manager quietly asked, Mr. Su, what's going on? I nonchalantly replied, Nothing much. Just a few insignificant pests. At that, Wang Dahai immediately flew into a rage. Kid, am I giving you face? You're dead today? Even the king of hell can't save you. Just then, a burly man walked over. What are you doing? Who gave you permission to cause trouble here? Wang Dahai's expression changed immediately. Brother Kuang, why are you here? Kuang coldly replied, I have important business today. Anyone causing trouble here will have to face me. Kuang, on the surface, is a famous businessman in Chengdu, but behind the scenes, he has extensive connections. His influence is not to be trifled with. Wang Dahai couldn't afford to offend him. No worries, Brother Kuang. You just take care of your business. In his lifetime, he was a significant force in Chengdu. Even the Hell Extermination Division was under his command. Previously, when the apocalypse began, the Newton Hotel was the first to undergo transformation. Now it's clear that Kuang's rise to power as the human world's ruler is due to those early changes. If that's the case, then I'm sorry. General Manager Ton, holding a glass of red wine, smiled and said, I have heard of you, Miss Duan, for a long time. Today I finally have the chance to meet you. He raised his glass. Let's toast first. Duan Ass stared at the glass of wine in front of her, feeling confused about what to do. Why aren't you drinking, Miss Duan? Could it be that there's something wrong with the wine? This is General Manager Ton, a well-known figure in the business world. We've prepared a banquet for you. Why not give it a try? But before he could finish, he was interrupted by General Manager Ton. In Chengdu, no one dares to refuse the wine I pour. Resigned, Cao Kung could only lower his head, not knowing what to say. Duan Ah thought to herself that Cao Kung is truly detestable. To curry favor with Tonduk Bao, he has harmed me. He relies on his power in Chengdu to wreak havoc, not knowing how many girls he has hurt. It seems today he has taken notice of me. There was definitely something wrong with this drink, but what could I do? Just then, a brilliant flash of red light erupted behind me. I glanced over, recalling how in my previous life, Sothun and I had hidden in a bunker to escape the flames. Little did I expect him to follow me here in this life. The opportunity for revenge had finally arrived. While everyone was joyfully splashing in the pool, the moonlight above suddenly erupted into a terrifying surge of energy, causing the temperature to skyrocket. People began to scream, It's too hot! Too hot! They didn't hesitate, they barreled toward the hotel. A few of them burst through the doors like rockets, shouting frantically, It's too hot! Too hot! Upon seeing the fish tank, they were like cornered dogs, diving one by one into the bathtub. Ah, this feels so good, they exclaimed. This fish tank belongs to me. Everyone get outside now. Yet, Vung Daihai was so disoriented from the heat that he felt like his mind was spinning. His face and body were covered in countless blisters. Witnessing this scene, the man was filled with a frantic rage. Hai Ka, we should head to the hospital. At the same time, Cao Kung also sensed something was amiss. General Director Ton, I feel like something is off. We should go downstairs and check. Meanwhile, chaos erupted in the lobby. Everyone, please calm down. We've contacted the rescue team, they'll be here shortly. Cao Kung asked his subordinate, What's going on? The sergeant replied, I'm not sure, I just saw the moonlight suddenly brighten, and then the temperature shot up. The media reported nearly 100 casualties. Witnessing the dire situation, General Director Ton immediately dialed Minister Trio. I'm at the Lukthan Hotel. Can you send someone to fetch me? Understood. Damn it, they want to stay safe up there. If the power isn't the issue, then there's no available manpower. It seemed the situation was escalating. Meanwhile, Vung Dai-hai was strategizing. With the heat like this outside, how can I get to the hospital? Suddenly, he remembered his little driver. Dao? All right, Hai-ka, I'm on my way. However, as he drove out of the garage, he was blinded by a blinding light. Why is it so bright at this hour? Just then, there was a loud bang. A tire had burst. Cursing under his breath, he got out of the car to investigate. He immediately reported the situation to Vung Dai-hai. Hai-ka, all the tires are blown. I can't go on. But soon, he felt as if his feet were glued to the ground. It turned out his shoes had made contact with the surface, which had begun to evaporate. This caused Dao to lose his balance and fall hard to the ground. Just as he tried to stand up, it was too late. All he could hear was the hissing sound in his ears. On the other hand, Vung Dai-hai could also hear the sizzling of meat being grilled. At this moment, Dao had turned to ashes. Meanwhile, I was basking in the comfort of the presidential suite. Not only was the air conditioning blissfully cool, but I also had my own private pool. I was completely unconcerned about the scorching heat outside. At that moment, the temperature had risen to a blistering 75 degrees, with the ground reaching an unbearable 100 degrees. This catastrophic event had claimed the lives of hundreds. The power company could no longer endure the heat. With a deafening crash, the power station erupted into flames. At that moment, Vung Dai-hai realized the severity of the situation. While everyone was still debating strategies, suddenly the room was plunged into darkness. Damn it, the power is out at this time. Everyone felt like chickens trapped in boiling water. Vung Dai-hai understood that they needed a plan. Just then, Teo-kien suddenly suggested, I remember there's a swimming pool in So-thun's room. We could take that over. Meanwhile, So-thun was swimming in the large pool. In his previous life, the power company encountered a major crisis due to lack of maintenance, which led to this catastrophe. No matter how much manpower was invested, a disaster was unavoidable. All electrical users were plunged into darkness. Fortunately, I had chosen a room with air conditioning and had prepared a large reserve of batteries, ensuring the temperature remained comfortable. Along with that, there were blocks of ice at the ready. It was pure bliss. Suddenly, my stomach growled loudly. With a flick of my wrist, a lavish banquet appeared before me. The first day of the apocalypse was simply about enjoying breakfast. I wondered when Cao Kung's opportunity would arrive. Just then, there was a sudden knock at the door. As I opened it, a chilling breeze rushed into Vung Dai-hai's throat. This brat even has air conditioning, I remarked coldly. What do you want? A man pointed into the room, shouting, In there, not only is there electricity and air conditioning, but there's food too. After he spoke, everyone rushed, pushing each other to get in. We're dying from the heat. Why should you enjoy it alone? Get out of this room if you don't want trouble. At that moment, Vung Dai-hai was still screaming for me to come out. Let me pay back the interest for those days, or I'll throw you out. Seeing this, I didn't hesitate. A gunshot rang out, hitting Vung Dai-hai in the stomach. Watching the wound on his belly, he collapsed to the ground, his face pale. Anyone who dares to step forward will face death. I will kill your dogs. He couldn't believe that I had a gun in my hand, only able to grit his teeth and whimper. You're good, I'll admit it. Just wait. But as soon as his words ended, I fired another shot. Instantly, Vung Dai-hai received another wound on his leg. You're leaving, or you're leaving. Why so much talk? If you want to die, just say it. I'll count to 3, then disappear from my sight. Meanwhile, Cao Laodai dared to dream of restoring order. How could such a large hotel lack food? The manager explained, a few days ago, So-thun had ordered over 1,000 banquet tables worth of ingredients, which were nearly depleted. At this moment, General Manager Ton unexpectedly commanded, Then bring all the remaining food and water up here for me. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire hall erupted into chaos. Having money is great, huh? Why should we give it to you? This was denying us a chance to survive. At that moment, Vung Dai-hai was helped out, limping down the steps. In these times, having a gun is rare. It seems like that guy up there is a formidable figure. At this moment, Xiaojian couldn't help but mention, his room not only has electricity but also air conditioning and a large swimming pool. The entire hall immediately buzzed with excitement. "Are you serious?" someone asked. Xiaojian nodded confidently. "I saw it with my own eyes. They can testify." Hearing this, everyone quickly started heading toward Su Shen's room. Gao Qiang, meanwhile, instructed his subordinates to follow closely. "Watch my expression and act accordingly. I don't need to teach you how to handle this, do I?" Gao Qiang instructed his subordinates. When someone knocked on the door, I opened it. "Is there something you need?" I asked. One of the young men replied, "Comrade, can we have a little chat? Maybe let us in to cool off a bit." But at that moment, a chubby boy saw the plate of fried chicken on the table and, without hesitation, rushed towards it. "Oh my gosh, fried chicken, I want fried chicken," he exclaimed. In the apocalypse, I didn't care about manners or age, so I immediately kicked him, sending him flying out of the room. "Are you all seriously asking me for something?" I said, glaring at the others. "How could you hurt a child like that?" someone exclaimed. I responded coldly, "Control your children, or I won't hesitate to help you out." My words clearly caught the attention of many. One of them sneered, "You don't deserve to sit in this room." With that, he charged at me like a storm. "Let's throw him out together," someone shouted, but I remained unfazed. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. A bullet whizzed through the crowd and struck the forehead of someone behind me. Though I was alone, I reminded them, "Your lives are just as singular as mine." At this moment, Wang Dahai, having lost too much blood and suffering from a high fever that led to an infected wound, had already stopped breathing. "Su Shen, you bastard, I won't let you get away with this," someone shouted. Just then, there was another knock at the door. "Brother Chen, I know you can't bring yourself to shoot us," a voice called out. "Have you forgotten how much I love you? Just let us in, and whatever you want to do, well, cooperate without question," the voice pleaded. I opened the door with a smirk. Such deep sisterly affection. "If that's the case, then come in." Just then, an enraged man rushed forward. "Get out of my way, I want to kill you, Su Shen," he shouted. I looked at him calmly and said, "If you want to die, don't blame me. Anyone who crosses this threshold without my permission will pay with their life." "Welcome. Next in line," I said, my voice icy. By this point, Xiaojian and the others were terrified, their courage completely drained. "It's warm outside, we're not coming in," they stammered. I coldly replied, "If that's the case, then leave quickly. If you don't want to leave, that's fine too. Just be prepared to leave your lives here." At that moment, a rescue vehicle arrived beneath the hotel. Fully equipped soldiers in protective gear stepped out. "Excuse me, is Academician Liu Zhengguo here?" one of them asked. "Please have Academician Liu put on protective gear and follow us. The rest of you, there's no need to panic. At midnight, the temperature will be at its lowest point of the day. At that time, everyone can head to the rescue point at Silicon Square on their own," one of the soldiers announced. Hearing that there was a rescue plan, everyone couldn't help but cheer in relief. "That's wonderful," they shouted in joy. "It seems that the government hasn't given up on us just yet." Suddenly, Director Sun from behind shouted furiously, "I am Team Leader Zombie Sun Debao. Bring the protective gear here, and he'll give you 1 billion. As soon as he finished his words, he was immediately apprehended by the guards. "Professor Liu is our nation's top geologist. Please, do not obstruct us." Faced with the armed soldiers, Gao Qiang could only stand there, bewildered. At that moment, Jiang Shan tugged at a soldier's arm. "Soldier, wait! There's a crazed killer upstairs. He has already killed many people." Gao Qiang and the others nodded in agreement. "That's right. That guy is armed. We can't let him escape." Upon hearing this, the soldier removed his helmet. "If that's the case, lead me up to take a look. I want to know who you truly are." Seeing their goal achieved, Zhang Xiaojian wore a wicked smile. Once Shizhen is gone, she would relish the freedom in that room. Meanwhile, Xiaofeng had stealthily approached the door, but discovered a hidden camera concealed in a flower pot. In an instant, a flash grenade and then a tear gas grenade were thrown in succession. Seeing this, Xiaofeng couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh, mother!" The blinding light made his titan-like eyes shine even brighter, while the tear gas brought tears streaming down his face. Awaiting him was a dream of Shizhen. When he picked up the ID card to look, he saw his name was Liu Xiaofeng, deputy team leader of the Special Task Force. Upon waking up, Liu Xiaofeng questioned, "Who exactly are you?" I replied, I'm just a graduate student, and I got the firearms during my trip to the Middle East. You probably know that the government has set up relief points for residents to reach by midnight. Hearing this, Liu Xiaofeng was immediately taken aback. How do you know this? I simply smiled and said, because I experienced it in my past life. Although the temperature will drop significantly at midnight, if exposed to moonlight for more than a minute, one will faint. Many will perish on their way to the relief points. Liu Xiaofeng conceded that this was indeed possible, but without such measures, people would die even faster. They'll have to fend for themselves. At that moment, I patted his shoulder. In fact, thick blankets and down jackets can also provide insulation. If you don't fall, your chances of survival can greatly improve. With that, I aimed my gun at the back of his head, and Liu Xiaofeng immediately signaled to his men to hold on. Wait until I finish reporting about the blankets before you kill me, he said. Rest assured, I won't call for backup, but right after that, I cut the ropes binding him. Liu Xiaofeng was quite puzzled. I respect the government's efforts. Therefore, this time I will spare you, but I won't forgive you if you provoke me again. Liu Xiaofeng countered, Aren't you afraid? He'll call for backup after leaving. Hearing this, I pointed above. Take a good look at what that is. It turned out to be a machine gun with a facial recognition camera. Where did you get this? Someone demanded. I replied calmly, I already told you, it's from the Middle East. As long as it operates, I'll be the only one to survive in this room. But in this chaotic situation, I doubt any of you have the time to pay attention to me. Not long after, Liu Xiaofeng emerged wearing the protective suit. Damn it, that guy upstairs. Could he really have some powerful backing? Even the soldiers couldn't touch him. He muttered angrily, then punched Gao Chang hard in the face. What am I paying you for? He shouted. Seeing Sun Debao act so arrogantly, Gao Chang's men couldn't hold back their anger any longer. Boss, how long do we have to keep enduring this? One of Gao Chang's men muttered in frustration. But Gao Chang looked troubled. We can't make a move yet. Once order is restored, we'll need to leverage his connections, he said, trying to sound rational. I looked at him with contempt in my eyes. The apocalypse has already arrived, and yet Brother Gao is still dreaming of restoring order, I remarked, dripping with sarcasm. Hearing this, Gao Chang's subordinates were instantly enraged. What did you just say, kid? Do you want me to kill you right now? One of them snarled, stepping forward aggressively. But Gao Chang quickly intervened, holding him back. Seeing me come down, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fear and asked, Why did you come down here? I replied calmly. Oh, nothing much. Just wanted to discuss a little deal with Brother Gao. Then I casually poured some ice cubes out of my insulated cup. The sight of the ice made the two of them jump in surprise. Ice cubes, Brother Gao. If he's got ice, he must have a lot of other good stuff in that room, one of them exclaimed, eyes wide with realization. Kill him, and everything will be ours, one of them muttered. But before they could act, I swiftly pressed the gun to his neck. The long-haired man immediately raised his hands, cooperating without hesitation. Gao Chang burst into laughter. Brother Su, don't bother with these rough types. Let's discuss the deal first, he said, trying to diffuse the tension. After finalizing the terms, Gao Chang greedily inhaled the coolness of the ice cubes. Damn, this is so refreshing, he muttered, clearly satisfied. He had never imagined that something as simple as an ice cube could bring such gratification. The two others silently decided to take advantage of the moment when I let my guard down to kill me. But just then, the atmosphere shifted. Sun Debao cursed loudly and kicked him hard. You've got these nice ice cubes, and you dare to enjoy them all by yourself. If there's a next time, I'll kill you, he spat, then punched Gao Chang in the head. Little did Sun Debao know, thanks to Su Shen's words, Gao Chang had already begun plotting to kill Sun Debao. The seeds of betrayal had been planted. Meanwhile, Sun Debao remained leisurely analyzing the military situation. He inadvertently noticed someone behind him glaring at him with a dark expression. Isn't that Duanya? He muttered in surprise. In this heat, and you still refuse to take off your clothes. Indeed, you're quite arrogant, but I like girls like you. Now come with me, he said, but Duanya slapped him across the face. You scoundrel, don't touch me, she retorted. Seeing this, Sun Debao grew furious. You idiot, I'm right here, he shouted, his anger palpable. At that time, everyone will get a taste of it, he continued with a sinister grin, looking at her drenched appearance. My big blade has long been eager. Let me help you take everything off. A cold voice echoed from behind him. I think, Sun Debao, you've gone too far. Seeing Gao Chang, Sun Debao scolded him. Gao Chang, do you think I'm showing you any respect? Do you even know who you're talking to? But waiting for him was the cold barrel of Gao Chang's gun. Su Shen was right, Gao Chang said, his voice steady. Can't you see the chaos unfolding outside while you're here rambling? I've endured your nonsense for far too long, so it's time for you to meet your end. His cold gaze swept across the crowd in this moment. I, Gao Chang, am the one calling the shots. Others must either head to the rescue point or perish here. At this, Duanya was taken aback. Does Gao Chang really intend to claim this territory? Meanwhile, I stood silently from the upper floor, observing. It seemed those words had struck a chord with Gao Chang. In his previous life, he was the overlord of this place. If things progress rapidly now, could it be that Gao Chang's opportunity will fall into my hands? Before long, Zhang Xiaojian and her close friend began pleading for water from Gao Chang, vowing that no matter what, they would stand by his side. I hurriedly poured the remaining ice water for the two. If that's the case, you can follow me, but whether you survive or not depends on your own merits. The spear wielder beside me questioned, aren't we supposed to head to the rescue point? Moreover, our supplies are running low. Why should we protect these useless people? At this, Gao Chang let out a chilling laugh. Suo Chen, don't we need a few hands on deck? Why hold on to some pawns? In just a moment, midnight loomed, and Zhang Xiaoxian and her friend finally prepared to leave this cursed place. But just then, Zhang Mao yanked their blanket away. You've had your ice water from the boss and still want to leave. You're mistaken. Why not stay and chat with the big shot a little? Didn't you say you'd do anything? Meanwhile, everyone was already on their way to the rescue point. Since Gao Chang took control of the rations, they'd never received any food or water. They'd rather die of thirst in this hotel than risk it all for a glimmer of hope at the rescue point. But outside, the heat was worse than they had imagined, even with wood strapped to their shoes. They could still feel the searing heat of the ground. Suddenly, an elderly woman stumbled and collapsed, blood oozing from her mouth and hands. The others had no time to concern themselves with someone else's life or death. It wasn't long before several had perished from falls on the peninsula. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiaoxian began to panic. Brother, please don't make a fuss. We will cooperate with you. Hearing this, Zhang Mao mockingly exclaimed, so these girls are finally feeling ashamed. Are they afraid of me or the monsters? But just then, a pair of red claws burst through the window. It turned out to be the zombies, Wang Dahai and Tang Dabao, who had crashed in. The scorching heat had transformed them into flesh-eating undead. Meanwhile, Gao Chang and the others were clearly terrified. If they were bitten, would they turn into zombies? Gao Chang, with his muscular frame, tightened his grip on the neck of the canine man. Let's see what happens. But at that moment, I stepped forward slowly. Everyone, stand back. Let me handle these two. Zhang Mao looked at me in astonishment. Was he really planning to face the zombies alone? Gao Chang wants to put a knife into the zombie's body, and we will eliminate it together. These corpses will mutate after burning, but they will not be infected with viruses. They are like Hanba in the classic of mountains and seas. So Chen called them Hanba. These Hanbas actually retain some memories from their past lives, which can be said to have been killed and buried by Gao Chang in his previous life. Therefore, his beliefs made him the first Hanba, and Gao Chang is exactly his target for revenge, Wang Dahai. I killed him and became another Hanba, so Gao Chang's opportunity is not Wang Dahai, but Hanba's buried treasure. I, Chen, must hold this opportunity in my hand. After speaking, I split the buried treasure in half. The next moment, a purple gold and silver fell from the buried treasure's body. It turned out to be a gold and silver with extraordinary physical fitness. If that's the case, I will reluctantly smile. The remaining Hanba let you slowly deal with Gao Chang. With a roar in classical Chinese, he tightly gripped the bastard's neck and stood up for me. After speaking, he forcefully pushed the guy into Wang Dahai's arms and let us fly together. As long as he took out his weapon, I would drink in the room. In a post-apocalyptic world, occasional mutated monsters may appear. A diamond that is not easily found among 100 diamonds. Then he swallowed a diamond and a glass of wine. His eyes were filled with a strong red light, indicating that he was beginning to absorb the energy of the diamond. This feeling stimulated every cell in the body, burning every inch of flesh with heat. Suddenly, a strong pain struck, and he couldn't help but scream. Soon, he fainted because he couldn't take it anymore. The classical Chinese side had already dealt with Wang Dahai, but he had also exhausted all the water. At this moment, he grabbed one of his long legs. "You're about to run, bitch. Do you believe he'll break your leg? I can't see. My best friend said Big Brother doesn't have water. Well, die of thirst, but I have a way to deal with Chen. Zhang Xiaoshan is his fiancée. If we kill him at the door, Chen will definitely open the door. You may suddenly attack him, but Zhang Xiaoshan told us not to do so. I can cooperate with you unconditionally, but now I want to eat meat." After hearing this, classical Chinese gave Zhang Xiaoshan a cold glance. "If you want to eat meat, do it yourself." Zhang Xiaoshan looked shocked. What did you say was the meat on his body? Then she seemed to have made a decision. She quickly snatched a short knife from classical Chinese's hand. She walked towards her best friend without hesitation. Now her best friend is obviously scared. "We are best friends. You can't do this." But Zhang just looked at her coldly. "So don't blame me for being heartless." With those words, she plunged the dagger into her best friend Vungon's abdomen, leaving everyone nearby in shock. These women, when determined, could be more terrifying than any man. At that moment, Jiang Tiuthian had spiraled into a frenzy. "When I've had my fill, I will take your life, Sothun." At this point, Vungon suggested that Duan Ngui take charge of the slaughter. The brothers needed strength to face Sothun. "Where is Duan Ngui? Hurry and find him." Meanwhile, my own abilities had also completed their transformation. Could this be a physical power? I could feel it vividly. My body enhanced its heat resistance, and my muscles and strength surged in response. I was brimming with explosive energy. But just then, I caught a glimpse of Duan Ngui. He mentioned that Vungon and the others had gone insane. This was his only hope for survival. "Please let me in, will you?" But I suddenly remembered my current state, completely unclothed. "Is something wrong?" Duan Ngui didn't answer, just stared at me with a dazed expression. I quickly threw on some clothes, feeling embarrassed, and coughed awkwardly. "Sorry, my resources are limited. Besides, we've only just met once. I can't take you in just because you're beautiful." Duan Ngui then clarified that he was not merely a chef, but also an outstanding student who graduated from Southwest Medical University with a license and 3 years of surgical experience. Hearing this, Tothun pondered for a moment. In his past life, Duan Ngui was a resilient woman who had a collaborative relationship with Vungon. Although he had considered winning her over, the current atmosphere felt somewhat awkward. Being a doctor was indeed a great temptation, but now resources were scarce, and no one knew if they would survive until tomorrow. Vungon immediately said, "As long as you don't kick me out, I can do anything for you." I smiled at that moment. "If the beautiful Duan has said so, then let's consider this your home." Duan Ngui suddenly realized he had misspoken. Everything that should and shouldn't be said had been spoken. I then shifted my tone. "But I need to warn you first, the only thing you need to do in front of me is to obey, without any other thoughts. Otherwise, I invite you to. Su Tianxing, rest assured, I've never doubted your abilities and awakening." Vungon looked at me with an unkind gaze. "Then take off your clothes immediately." Duan Ngui seemed a bit doubtful. "Su Tianxing, are we starting now?" "Of course, but first, you need to shower." Through the camera, I monitored her every move. This action wasn't for peeping, it was to ensure she had no ill intentions. After her shower, she changed into a new outfit. "Tioka, this outfit seems a bit tight." Seeing this, I feigned seriousness. "Not at all, it fits perfectly." "It's truly perfect." But just then, there was a frantic knock at the door. "Sunun, open the door. Save me. If I don't get out, I'll die." Beside me, Duan Ngui reminded, "We must not open the door. Vungon has already devoured someone. If we open the door, we might meet our doom." Hearing that, excitement surged within me. "You said they've turned to cannibalism." "Well, that makes things simpler." Without a second thought, I flung the door open. knowing that the remnants of humanity in Vun Gon had long since vanished. Sothun, at last, you dare to step into the light. Just as I was about to step out, a henchman of Vun Gon lunged at me from his hiding spot, knife in hand, ready to strike. But I swiftly seized his arm, twisting it back and pinning him down. A sharp crack echoed as I broke his arm with ease. Vun Gon watched in disbelief. How could this kid react so quickly? Meanwhile, Jang Tuthian had freed herself from her bonds and dashed towards me. In the blink of an eye, she was right in front of me. Sothun, save me. Little did I know, I had tightened my grip around her throat, because I knew that once they turned to cannibalism, their bodies would transform, fangs sprouting forth. Clearly, they were no longer human. The world had plunged into chaos. Surviving, whether as man or beast, was all that mattered. At this moment, Jang Tuthian, held tightly by me, let out a wild laugh. It smells so delicious. After indulging, I felt a surge of strength. As Sothun, I could hardly wait any longer. But before I could finish my thought, I kicked her away, sending her crashing through the glass and plummeting down. To my surprise, Jang Tuthian managed to grasp the window ledge with one hand. Sothun, I won't let you escape so easily. But then she realized something was amiss. The outside temperature was too high for her to endure. At the same moment, Chang Mao charged toward me, and I couldn't let him have the chance to draw his gun. Vun Gon looked down on us. Do you really need to waste bullets on trash like you, Sothun? Don't underestimate others too much. With that, he lunged at me, but I had no fear. Wasting a bullet on you is no concern for me. Vun Gon signaled to his henchmen to scatter. These mutated beings were not only strong, but their reflexes and speed had increased exponentially. While Vun Gon and his gang were ready, my bullet would surely miss them. Then you shall die. But just as I finished speaking, I grasped Chang Mao's head tightly. Are you done talking? If so, you can go die now. With that, I slammed Chang Mao's head into the ground. At that moment, a bald man wielding a knife rushed toward me. Seeing this, I immediately grabbed his arm. In that instant, Vun Gon charged at me, delivering a powerful punch. But in the next heartbeat, I seized his throat, lifting him up and smashing him against the wall. Just then, a long tongue, stretching 40 meters, unexpectedly appeared behind me. Turning around, I realized it was Jang Tuthian. She roared at me, astonished at her own transformation. It seemed I haunted her thoughts. Then, I swiftly snapped Vun Gon's neck, and Jang Tuthian screamed at me, her body crackling with unsettling sounds. If you don't let go, I will kill you again. I served you for 730 days. I worked day and night for you for 2 years and gave you 51,000 in return, which is a cruel betrayal. You don't even consider me an outsider. You just killed me with that bastard. Now that I'm resurrected, you must pay 100 or even 1,000 times the price. He dealt with the classical Chinese gang alone, but in front of Tanju, it felt very dangerous. If Chu Chen can handle it, in order to be with him in the future, I need to find a way to let him know that I am not a burden. At the same time, I also realized his behavior. Turning around to look at me, he didn't know where he got a small whip from. Seeing this scene, I was confused. Now, do you still want to play a training game? What's going on? I just wanted to help you. Now, when you hear our conversation, you scream. Do you treat me like air? After saying this, she angrily charged towards me. I just gave her a disdainful glance. Not worried at all that she might hit my chest. Seeing this, Duanwei next to me was startled and covered his mouth. But Tanju's seemingly clever attack only tore my shirt, and my body was not injured at all, which made Tanju very angry. She hysterically reached her paws towards my neck, but I stood there motionless, letting her attack. Then she opened her mouth like a cherry and bit my shoulder tightly. Her teeth couldn't even hit my skin by a millimeter. So I mocked your teeth just to show off. It's my turn. After speaking, I grabbed your hand and punched you hard. I said coldly, "Are the marbles ready?" With just a click sound, his arm was immediately torn off. Chinmu's body fell to the ground, screaming in pain, and at the same time, I returned to the ground. At first, I just wanted you to taste the bitterness of the end of the world. But if you want to commit suicide, I must satisfy you today. But the next scene surprised me when Chinmu stretched out his 40-meter-long tail. It rolled up the body next to it, opened its cherry-like mouth, and swallowed it inside. Soon the body was left with only one shoe. Then, its severed arm began to move. Then he screamed angrily at me, "Chu, you can't kill me." This was something I didn't expect, making Duanwei almost scream. "What should we do now?" "But I don't care. I think it's great. It means you won't die so easily. It means I can torture you many times. If I can make you lose this regenerative ability, your survival ability in the end of the world will be greatly improved." Just as Chinmu's voice came again, I rushed forward and grabbed his arm. "You've turned into a zombie, yet you're still so strong. Let's see how many times your body can regenerate." With that, I immediately tore off his left arm. "Now let's move on to your right arm." Chinmu is still struggling, but I haven't given him a chance. Without hesitation, I cut off his right arm, stomped him on the ground, and then your tail and legs. This will be your first time, but only for a moment. Chinmu's severed limbs and tail began to move, and soon he returned to his original state. Now he could only lie on the ground in despair, panting heavily, but I just smiled lightly, and then I did it again. In Duanwei's surprise, I tore apart Chinmu with both hands. Chinmu had been tortured to the point where he had no strength to resist. Thinking about what he had done to me in the past, I did it for the 4th time. 5th time, the 8th time, even the tongue and intestines were torn off. The 20th time, all the internal organs were dug out, as if everything except for the head could be regenerated. You have the face to ask me why. Since I met you, I have served you for 2 years. During these 2 years, I gave you 51,000. I spent a lot of money but got something. All of this was voluntary. I didn't force you. Listen, my eyes have turned cold. You didn't force me, but you kept giving me hope and cold water. Do you know how painful I have been in the past 2 years? You hooked up with that man for money, shamelessly humiliated me, and died in front of you. Now all I want is revenge, I said calmly. From now on, you won't have another chance to harm anyone. Thinking about this, I slowly closed my eyes. Duanya, worried, asked, "Sushen, are you all right?" I turned back to her with a cold gaze. "Are you ready?" When I said these words, Duanwei looked puzzled. "What were you ready for?" I held Duanwei in my arms. I was very brave just now. "What should you reward me for?" And at the post-apocalyptic rescue station, the temperature has already returned to normal. A group of people are approaching the rescue site, so the captain turned around and looked back. This is not a living person, but a combination of dead bodies. Immediately organize people to evacuate the rescue site. I want to stop them. This is fate. Hurry, look towards the Luchang Hotel. After a relentless assault on Duangui, I have finally tamed this spirited little steed. To keep up, I must fulfill 2 essential conditions. 1, the person must hold value, and 2, they must wholly obey commands. With that, I am ready to venture out. In my previous life, many were haunted by the dread of reaching the rescue station, which ultimately sparked a wave of attacks on these very checkpoints. Countless civilians and soldiers fell victim to assaults from the undead, leading to a significant stockpile of weapons falling into civilian hands, thus giving rise to various factions. The vehicle ahead came to a halt. Indeed, these thugs are nothing but marauders. But with my fiery temperament, I will not show them mercy. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, crashing straight into the hoodlums, sending them flying. After that, I sped away. The scorching heat of the fire zone had caused the walls to crack, compounded by the onslaught from the undead. Ultimately, this led to the collapse of the subway station. The death toll is estimated to be in the thousands. It is a pity that not everyone possesses sharp wits. Dealing with each of them would consume an inordinate amount of time. Therefore, I decided to assess the situation at the school. However, as soon as I stepped into the school's laboratory building, I was confronted by a gang of thugs. "Throw your backpack down," they shouted. I reached into my backpack and pulled out a chicken leg. Instantly, the thugs perked up with excitement. It had been days since they'd seen such a delicacy, let alone enjoyed a bite. Hearing this, I simply smiled gently and tossed the chicken leg onto the ground. Immediately, the 3 thugs lunged forward, bickering. "That's mine, back off." But in a split second, I used a fine thread to yank the chicken leg back to me. This left the 3 thugs frozen in shock. Seeing this, they erupted in anger. "You dare toy with us." With that, they brandished baseball bats, ready to strike. But I swiftly drew my gun. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots, intending to take down all 3. Oddly enough, I remember in my previous life there weren't so many fools like these. Could it be that my earlier warnings have led to such a scenario? After that, I made my way to the reptilian biology lab. Inside, it was teeming with various reptiles and the stench of decay. In no time, I found what I needed. It was none other than the future leader of the water snake legion, the golden serpent. This snake was still alive, feeding off the corpses of its kin. In my past life, it was this very snake that initiated the mutation process. I nearly met my end in its jaws. A week after the floods arrived, it would begin to mutate. I wonder how far it has mutated this time. Moreover, it seems that this snake has evolved a bit of intelligence. If I can't defeat it when the time comes, it could spell trouble. Just then, a sudden noise from behind made me turn around. Sure enough, someone was there. In my previous life, I served goddess Tanmu for 780 days, working tirelessly to earn money for her. Over 2 years, I transferred a total of 510,000 to her, only to be met with cold betrayal. She didn't just see me as an outsider, she humiliated me to the point of death in front of another man. Now, I've been given a second chance at life. I am determined to make her pay 100-fold, even 1,000-fold. Only I know that the apocalypse is approaching. At that time, the global temperature will rise by 1,000 degrees, countless monsters lying dormant underground will awaken, and humans will turn into monsters devouring each other. Survivors will have to fight for resources. At that time, even a single pack of instant noodles could drive people to fight to the death. A single sausage could turn a once majestic goddess into a mere plaything for men. When the apocalypse arrives, what will matter the most? Of course, in most of my past life, I spent my time searching for material possessions, so this time I must be prepared. I was 20 seconds late for work, which deducted half a day's salary. In my past life, before the end of the world, my boss had already fled. In my past life, all the material possessions belonged to me, so I raised my hand. A space composed of blue energy suddenly appears, and all greasy foods will be automatically absorbed. This is my special ability. It brings me great convenience in shopping, and the substances in the space can be kept fresh for a long time. When I started checking the materials in the space, the warehouse manager suddenly pushed open the door, and they were completely stunned by the scene in front of them. Where did all of this go? Listen, I just smiled lightly. It was obvious that when this sentence came out, I took it away. 3 people immediately rushed in, trying to catch me. I disappeared in the blink of an eye, so all 3 of you were wondering where you were. Now I've crossed space and jumped outside the warehouse. This skill can penetrate any space within a 3-meter range. During the end of the world, I am free to collect resources from buildings, and in the face of powerful mutant beasts, I can also save my life. Today, free shopping ends here, and the phone in my pocket rings. The government knows that the end of the world is coming, but in order to avoid causing panic among people, they lied and said it was just a natural disaster caused by crustal movement. At that moment, Jiang Shaoshan suddenly called Chen and said, "You hung the house in the middle of the street. Do you think selling the house will make a woman want to be with you? It'll give you another chance. Immediately transfer the house into my name, or else don't even think about marrying me." Upon hearing this, I abruptly hung up the phone. In my past life, I had endured 80 years serving her, only to have her bring a boyfriend into my home, stabbing me without a word. She didn't just rob me of everything I owned. She treated me as if I were invisible. She even dared to humiliate me to the brink of death. Now that I've been given a second chance, I swear I will make her pay for everything she's done to me. As for the assets, I will need to purchase them with hard cash, so I quickly called the real estate company, seeking manager Liu. But Jiang Shaoxian and her man had already been waiting at the brokerage. As soon as I stepped out of the taxi, she berated me. "Do you know how long I've waited for you?" Yet, I chose to ignore her and walked straight into the store. Upon seeing the situation, her man wielded a baseball bat. "You're blocking our way. Who gives you the right to sell our house? Believe it or not, I'll deal with you right here." But before he could finish his threat, I effortlessly lifted him and slammed him down to the ground like a deflated balloon. Jiang Shaoxian, that wretched woman, even attempted to rush to his aid. I swiftly responded with a hard slap aimed directly at her. Seeing this, Zhang Oshan looked at me in disbelief. "Sothun, you dare hit me?" I merely let out a cold laugh and replied, "What of it? I'm hitting this pathetic couple. Moreover, let me remind you of something. You have no say in how I handle my house. It's not your place to point fingers here." At this moment, Zhang Xiaoxian regained her composure and began to assert her dominance. "While I'm still calm, you better kneel down and apologize, or else don't even dream of marrying me in this lifetime." But the only response I gave them was a cold, menacing glare. Seeing this, the pathetic couple immediately turned to flee, not forgetting to throw a threat over their shoulders. "Sothun, just you wait." Once inside the company, Manager Liu hurriedly approached me, bowing respectfully and asking, "How much do you wish to sell for?" I answered, "I only need half the market value of the house." Manager Liu grinned cunningly. "The house is worth over 100 million, and this fool is selling it for just 70 million. It's easy to pocket tens of millions here." But I insisted that today I would pay the full amount in cash all at once. Compared to material possessions, this house is worthless in the apocalypse. In no time, the 70 million was transferred. However, this amount, in the context of the impending doom, was like a drop in the ocean. I had to think of ways to earn more money. Just then, I spotted a loan advertisement on a telephone pole by the roadside. "Just get the money, and we'll figure it out later." After that, I went to a pawn shop, but Wang Daihai at the pawn shop said he could only offer a maximum of 50 million. Moreover, I had to leave the property deed here. Without hesitation, I slammed the property deed down on the table. 60 million. I need it immediately. I'll pay back both principal and interest once I'm done. Hearing this, Wang Daihai immediately understood. This kid is certainly a gambler. He's so deep into this that he would even sell his own mother for a chance to recover. He simply chuckled to himself, then without hesitation transferred 60 million into my account. Soon after, I arrived at the best 10-star hotel in the city. In my previous life, most structures crumbled before the disaster, but the Lucheng Hotel stood firm until the very end. Later, this place would become my stronghold. Although I had stockpiled plenty of supplies, there were no hot meals to be found within. Thus, I approached the restaurant manager and requested to reserve 1,000 banquet tables. Upon hearing this, the manager was momentarily dumbfounded, yet he proceeded to quote the price for the feast. I reserved 1,000 tables and mentioned that I could make a deposit of 50 million up front. Hearing this, he led me in to make the deposit, already considering me a true young master and immediately concocting ideas of forming connections. He then smiled and asked, "Mr. Su, are you preparing for a wedding?" "Indeed, it's for the wedding," I replied. "While you're at it, please book me a presidential suite as well." I then left the hotel, satisfied. As for the payment later, under the realm of fire, a block of ice could also be worth billions. However, not long after I departed, Zhang Xiaoxian and that despicable couple approached the restaurant manager, claiming that he was the boyfriend of Mr. Shi. What did he come here for earlier? The manager looked her up and down. This girl had none of the elegance I possessed. How could the wealthy nowadays be attracted to someone like her? Nonetheless, he revealed that I had reserved 1,000 banquet tables. Upon hearing this, the despicable couple was immediately stunned, thinking to themselves, how could this poor fellow afford 10 million for a banquet? Seeing their misfortune, the manager promptly pulled out a photo of my deposit from earlier. Perhaps Chen truly was a reclusive young master. They thought to themselves, Chen treating me this way clearly intended to present me with a grand surprise at the wedding, a scene worthy of a fairy tale. I never expected it would unfold in the presence of Chen, that loathsome character. Returning home, Chen began to calculate. After deducting previous expenses, there remained 80 million in the account. Clearly, this amount was insufficient to procure the necessary supplies for the apocalypse. At this moment, to borrow money would truly be unfair. After a series of transactions, the balance in my account suddenly increased by 97 million. Now that I had the funds, I could acquire the essential supplies for the apocalypse. There was no time to waste. Thinking thus, I immediately set to work like a furnace igniting. Ice makers and all other supermarket essentials were purchased online. I even ordered an ice tank, unsure if it could withstand the task at hand. So, I made a deposit of 50 million to order 2,000 tons of smokeless coal and then contacted the ice factory to place my order for ice. The ice factory required me to attend an interview, but as I entered the factory, I unexpectedly encountered Zhang Xiaoxian, the one who had haunted me, along with her best friend. This girl had slandered me in my previous life, falsely accusing me and alleging that Zhang Xiaoxian had taken over my home. The moment I laid eyes on those two, my excitement faded away. Just as I was about to leave, Zhang Xiaoxian pulled me back. Once she discovered I was a hidden tycoon, her attitude shifted dramatically. She kept apologizing and suggested we go shopping together. However, I resolutely declined without a hint of mercy. These two fools thought I was merely putting on a show. In their eagerness to catch up, they hastily called for a taxi. Soon enough, we arrived at the Ronghua ice factory. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, the director promised that within 2 days, 2,000 tons of ice would be ready, but he required a deposit of 100 million. Next day, delivery would be made right to my door, and I could pay the remaining sum then. Upon receiving the 100 million deposit, the boss' grin was as wide as the ocean. "Sir, with such a large order, could it be for a major event? If we collaborate in the future, we can negotiate prices." Hearing this, I simply smiled. I intended to head off for charity work in Alxa, but just as I was about to leave, Zhang Xiaoxian and her friend appeared at the factory director's office. Upon learning I was purchasing 800,000 blocks of ice, their jaws dropped in astonishment. This only solidified their assumption that Chen was indeed a hidden tycoon. When they found out these ice blocks were destined for charity work in Alashan, their shock deepened. After preparing all the necessary materials, I returned to the hotel, ready to indulge in the lavish lifestyle of the wealthy. Yet, when I glanced at the menu, I was left utterly speechless. Prices for the dishes were astronomical, starting at 17,000. It was only after the server's introduction that I learned these were all dishes crafted by a world-renowned Michelin chef. But the specifics depended on how they were presented. Intrigued, I decided to try a few. After a brief wait, a tall girl with pink hair approached, carrying a dish. From her words, I gathered she was the head chef of the restaurant. "This dish has been specially designed for you, tailored to your taste." Hearing this, I looked up, only to be surprised to see her. Hell's exorcist, a master of culinary arts. In the face of the apocalypse, her cooking was enchanting. No one could resist her elegant allure. Yet, the ingredients for these dishes were derived from the bizarre transformations of the frail body. "Lose it, and you shall perish." Seeing my expression, Duan Yu instantly blushed and smiled shyly. Could it be that she feared I, a beauty, would poison her dish? In response, I remained silent, savoring each bite with satisfaction. If the apocalypse truly arrived, who could tell if there was poison within this meal? After finishing, I planned to visit the Century Bar for some fun. After all, this was a paradise for spenders. Some people even dropped millions here without ever touching a single woman. Yet, 2 days later, such places would cease to exist. Thankfully, I could experience it once before the end, leaving no regrets. During our conversation, I learned from the girl that she had come here to drown her sorrows after being deceived by her boyfriend, only to find herself chasing after older women instead. Is it true that all you men only care about sleeping with women? After saying that, I downed the glass of wine in my hand and slammed it onto the table. Then, I asked Chen if he was single. He nodded, and upon hearing that, the girl instantly moved closer. "Do you want to spend the night with me?" At that moment, Zhang Xiaoxian and her friend couldn't sit still and began to chase after us. Seeing this, I embraced the girl in my arms and said, "I want to." Then I pulled her and dashed upstairs. Zhang Xiaoxian, like a piece of gum, continued to pursue us. I hurriedly pulled the girl up to the second floor, reaching the room just a step ahead of them, and locked the door behind us. Then I held her tightly in my arms as she appeared shy. "Is this your first time?" Hearing that made me feel flustered. Suddenly a wave of realization struck me. "You're too drunk. I'm the righteous one here, and I won't do anything inappropriate." Out of good intentions, I reminded her that it was best not to go out for a few days. Those who dream of love shouldn't come to places like this, and there won't be a future either. After that, I slammed the door shut, and as soon as I stepped outside, I saw Zhang Xiaoshan and her friend. Even though I wanted to be with the girl tonight, with these two around, there was no chance. Fast forward to the next day. The items I had ordered arrived one after another, and that troublesome couple brought along their friend too. Zhang Xiaoshan wondered what Chen was really up to. But when they saw the banquet table and the red carpet, Zhang Xiaoshan began to daydream again, thinking I was setting this up to propose to her. After all, even if Chen proposed, I wasn't even sure I'd accept his offer. That would depend on how well he performed at that moment. Zhang Xiaoshan then approached me, asking why I had prepared so much. I merely shot her a disdainful glance. If you want to know, first help me arrange these things, and then we can talk. Chen, are you joking? Zhang Xiaoshan can't do heavy lifting like this. Don't even think about it. A friend beside her reminded, Chen, you must be testing her, seeing if she has what it takes to be a wealthy lady. Upon hearing this, Zhang Xiaoshan immediately smiled awkwardly. It's no problem, Chen. I'm not a weak woman. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoshan began dreaming about the life of a wealthy lady. To succeed, one must meet the requirements. If I could endure Chen's test today, he would surely propose to me grandly. Her friend looked at me with bashfulness. Mr. Chen, let me help you, boy. She secretly thought to herself that all young bosses were lecherous. Even if she couldn't become a wife, being a concubine wouldn't be bad either. Seeing this, Chen merely smiled. Free labor is a waste if you don't use it. With so many supplies, even if the factory sent someone, it would take quite a while to move everything. From morning until sunset, they finally finished transporting everything. Zhang Xiaoshan was exhausted, panting heavily. That Chen really was infuriating. Free labor is a waste if not utilized. With so much material, even if the factory sent someone, it would take ages to move everything. From dawn until dusk, we finally finished moving all the supplies. Zhang Xiaoshan was panting, utterly exhausted. That Chen was truly detestable. Moving things all day without a meal. Just wait, when I get my hands on your money, I'll make it mine. His friend was also dead on the ground, unable to get up. That bastard Chen dared to treat me like a beast of burden. That block of ice weighed at least over 100 pounds. Meanwhile, Zhang Xiaoshan was still dreaming of being a boss. Everything had been moved and checked. Now she should be proposing to me, right? Those wealthy guests should show up any moment now, but they didn't receive the expected outcome. I just gave the driver a nudge, and I'll give each worker a red envelope with 10,000 dong inside. The remaining amount stipulated in the contract will be supplemented in a week. The boss truly is generous and imposing. Zhang Xiaoshan, exhausted like a dog, leaned against the doorframe, swaying as she approached. Shen, it's already come to this. I lazily looked at him. Oh right, if I hadn't mentioned it, I might have almost forgotten. Thank you all for helping me out. If there's nothing else, you can head home. Zhang Xiaoshan was utterly panicked. Shen, don't joke with me. You prepared so much, it's not like you're planning to propose to me. Let those guests show themselves, and we'll get married and live happily together. Hearing this, I bluntly replied, marriage. What a joke. To afford all this, I not only sold my house but also racked up a mountain of debt. If you want to, it's not impossible. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaoshan immediately flared up with anger. How could that be? You've already spent over 10 million on the wedding and countless more on these things. How can you not have money? It dawned on her that what he meant was that this was a charity gift from a wealthy benefactor meant for the poor. How can you buy all these things and still say you don't have money more? Turns out you're saying this because these supplies are being prepared by a wealthy owner for poverty alleviation. They will be delivered to Alxa for use. I'm just here to help everyone out. Upon hearing this explanation, Zhang Xiaoshan was completely infuriated. The ugly truth couldn't be hidden any longer. Shen, you're a damned scoundrel. Turns out you've been deceiving me all along. With that, she shoved me, but I simply sidestepped, coldly retorting, then tell me, what exactly have I deceived you about? Just then, Zhang Xiaoshan suddenly fell to the ground. Shen, You are a filthy bastard. You're not the son of a wealthy owner, so don't dream of marrying me." Hearing this, I looked at her with disdain. Who would want a practical girl like you? Even if you were free, I wouldn't want you. As those words slipped from my lips, Jiang Shaoxin was so furious, she looked as if she might explode. "You die. Shen, you'll pay for what you've done today." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away. Her friend pointed at me. "Shen, you're done for this time." "You fools," I scoffed. "In the apocalypse, there exist pitiable souls like you." I locked the door to the resource vault tightly, all provisions laid out. Now it was just a matter of waiting for the end to unfold. In an instant, everything was drawn into the space, and before I knew it, night had fallen. Rejected, the couple clung to Vung Daihai like shadows. "Chitoso treats you this way. You should let him go and stay by my side. Don't worry, I assure you, Daika will teach him a lesson." As I sat eating, I witnessed it all unfold. This girl really had no standards. Anyone can swallow their pride. In that moment, the couple noticed my presence. "Big brother, that little punk laid his hands on me." Vung Daihai shouted, "So it's you, kid. I was just about to find you. Who would have thought you dared to touch my little brother? What a scoundrel you are," he growled. "You borrowed 600,000 from me, and now it's time to pay up." Jiang Tuthian, having tasted defeat, couldn't help but jab at Sochun. He'll never repay Hai Ka in this lifetime. Luckily, it had nothing to do with him. I wiped my mouth. Even eating was fraught with tension. You have to repay tomorrow, yet here you are, having a good time, ma'am. So, you really don't take Vung Daihai seriously, do you? Don't say you can earn 600,000 tonight. At that moment, Tu Yin stepped forward. Dog-like man chimed in. What can he do? Daika, don't waste time with him, just get rid of him. Just then, the restaurant manager approached. Everyone, please keep the peace. If you do, I might spare you a little face. Now, let's have this brat kneel and apologize to my little brother, and we can let this go. The manager quietly asked. So, Tinsing, what's going on here? I replied calmly. Nothing much, just a few small fry. Instantly, Vung Daihai's anger flared. Do you see me? You won't leave here alive today. Not even the Heavenly King could save you. A burly man approached. What are you doing? Who gave you the right to cause a ruckus here? At those words, Vung Daihai's expression shifted. Trunka, what are you doing here? The cold voice of Trunka echoed through the air. I have important matters today. Anyone causing trouble here is directly challenging me. Cao Kung, outwardly a renowned businessman in Thungdo, wove a web of connections in the shadows. His fingers brushed against many enemies, and Vung Daihai could not afford to make such a mistake. If not, Trunka, just handle your own affairs. Tonza Cao Kung, in his previous life during the apocalypse, was a powerful force in Thungdo. Even the hellish executioner Diengoksu Ma Doankat was his subordinate. Previously, the apocalypse had struck at the Lukthan Hotel, the first place to witness the mutation. It seems Cao Kung could rise to the status of Tongya due to the early onset of the mutation. If that's the case, then I'm sorry this opportunity belongs to me. Sochun, this chance is a blend of past grievances and fresh animosities. Cao Kung shot me a cold glance. This kid is somewhat interesting. In a luxurious hotel, General Director Ton said, I have invited Doankach to join us. I wonder if you have any insights to share, General Director Ton. With a gentle swirl of his wine glass, Ton replied, I've heard tales of the enchanting beauty that is Duan. Today, I finally have the pleasure of meeting you. Let us raise our glasses first. Duan Gui stared in terror at the glass of red wine before her, unsure of what to do. Why isn't the young lady drinking? Could it be that she fears this wine is poisoned? This banquet has been prepared for Director Sun. We really can't. But before she could finish her sentence, Director Sun interrupted her. In Shengdo, no one dares to refuse a drink poured by Sun himself. Reluctantly, Cao Chiang turned his face away. Duan couldn't help but think about that bastard, Cao Chiang, who clung to the Sun family while plotting against me. He relied on his power in Shengdo, standing tall while causing misery to countless women. It seems today he has set his sights on me. This glass of wine surely has some sinister intent. But what can I do? In the blink of an eye, a surge of crimson light erupted behind me. At the same time, on the side of Sun Shudang, in my past life, Jiang Shaoxin and I had hidden in the cellar to escape the fires of hell. Little did I expect, in this life, he has followed me here. The moment for revenge has arrived. It's time to settle old scores and new alike. While everyone was merrily enjoying the moonlit pool, an ominous energy suddenly surged forth. In an instant, the temperature skyrocketed. People screamed, their skin feeling as if it were being scorched. They darted like mad dogs towards the hotel. Those frantic individuals rushed through the front doors, and even after returning, they continued to cry out, "It's too hot upon seeing the fish tank," as if they were dogs spotting something foul. One by one, they dove into the bathtub as if it were a paradise. So refreshing, truly refreshing. "This fish tank is mine. You all need to get out." Meanwhile, Wang Dahai was in such discomfort that his head spun, his face breaking out in blisters. Seeing this scene, the poor man suddenly jolted. "Brother Hai, let's go check the hospital." At that moment, Cao Chang also sensed something was amiss. The temperature had suddenly become unbearably scorching. "Director Sun, I think there's something seriously wrong here. We should head downstairs and see what's going on." Duan Gui found a moment of respite. Chaos erupted in the grand hall. "Everyone, please calm down. We've contacted the rescue team. They will arrive shortly." Cao Chang questioned his subordinates about what was happening. The subordinate replied that he was also uncertain. Suddenly, the moonlight blazed fiercely and the temperatures soared. Reports flashed across the news. Nearly 100 fatalities had been confirmed. Witnessing this, Director Sun immediately called Minister Zhao. "I'm at Lucheng Hotel. Can you send someone to pick me up?" "Okay, I understand." "What the hell is going on? They up there want to conserve electricity, but there's no manpower available. It seems the situation has escalated greatly." Wang Dahai beside him was also devising a plan. "It's too hot out there. How can I get to the hospital now?" Suddenly, he remembered his driver, Xiao Dao. "All right, Brother Hai, I'll head over immediately." But just as he left the garage, he saw the blinding light of the sun. How could it be daytime at this hour? Before he could react, a loud bang echoed as the tire burst. Xiao Dao cursed as he stepped out of the vehicle, preparing to assess the situation and immediately report to Wang Dahai. "Brother Hai, the tire's blown. We can't go any further." Yet, right after that, he felt as if his feet were glued to the ground. It turned out that as soon as his shoes touched the earth, they were vaporized, causing Xiao Dao to lose his balance and tumble. By the time he realized what was happening and tried to get up, it was too late. All he heard was a hissing sound in his ear, while Wang Daihai's voice resonated with the sizzle of grilling meat. At that moment, Xiao Dao turned to ashes. Meanwhile, I was comfortably lying in the presidential suite, not just enjoying the cool air conditioning, but also a private swimming pool. I had no worries about the scorching heat outside. The temperature had skyrocketed to 75 degrees, with the ground heating up to a terrifying 100 degrees. This heat wave had claimed hundreds of lives, and the power company faced immense pressure due to the heat. All of a sudden, there was a loud crash, and the power company ignited in flames. At that moment, Wang Dahai realized the seriousness of the situation. As everyone discussed how to resolve it, the room was suddenly plunged into darkness. "What the hell? Why did the power go out now?" Everyone was like ants on a hot pan. Wang Dahai understood that they needed to think of a solution quickly. Just then, Jiang Shaoxian suggested, "I remember that there's a swimming pool in Shicheng's room. If not, we can take it back." In my past life, an explosion occurred at the power company due to improper maintenance, leaving devastating consequences. No matter how much manpower was invested, it couldn't be avoided. All users connected to the power company were plunged into darkness. Fortunately, I had chosen a room with a pool and prepared the air conditioning alongside a massive backup battery to keep the room at a perfect temperature. Adding some pre-prepared ice, it was truly refreshing. Suddenly, my stomach let out a loud growl. With a wave of my hand, a lavish banquet appeared before me. The first day of the apocalypse was simply about enjoying a good breakfast. Who knew when Gao Chang's opportunity would arise? Just then, there was a loud knocking on the door from outside. When I opened the door, a gust of cold wind rushed in, sending chills down Wang Daihai's spine. "Is this guy still radiating cold?" I said coldly. "What do you want?" Before Wang Daihai could respond, The man beside him pointed into the room and shouted, "Not only is there ice, but there's also food in there." As soon as he finished, everyone rushed in. "We're dying from the heat. How can you enjoy this all by yourself? If you know what's good for you, get out of here. Don't make us take action." Wang Daihai continued to yell at me to step outside. "Consider this as paying back for the past few days, or I'll throw you out." Seeing this, without hesitation, I shot him in the stomach. Looking at the wound on his belly, Wang Daihai's face turned pale. Anyone who takes another step will surely die. He never expected that I would have a gun in my hand and could only grit his teeth, letting out a soundless cry. "Joe Chen, I admit you're strong. Just you wait." But just as those words left my mouth, I fired again. Instantly, Wang Daihai received another dark wound on his leg. "I told you to leave. Why are you still talking? If you want to die, just say it straight. I'll only count to 3. Get out of my sight." At this moment, Cao Chang still wanted to restore order. "In such a big hotel, how can there be food?" The manager explained. "Just the day before, Shen booked over 1,000 banquet tables. The supplies in the warehouse are nearly exhausted." Just then, General Manager's son suddenly spoke up. "Then bring the remaining drinks and food up to me." Hearing son, the crowd erupted in a commotion. "Having money makes you so great, huh? Why should we have to yield to you? Are you not giving us a chance to survive?" At that moment, Wang Daihai, supported by others, limped forward. Cao Chang noticed the wound on his body, a gunshot. In these times, not many people had guns at their disposal. It seemed like, "Guy up there is quite a formidable character." At this moment, Jiang Shaoxian couldn't help but add, "In his room, there's not just electricity, but also air conditioning and a large swimming pool." Upon hearing this, everyone immediately buzzed with excitement, bombarding him with questions. "Are you serious?" Jiang Shaoxian confirmed. "I saw it with my own eyes. They can testify." Hearing this, everyone grouped together and headed towards Shen's room. Cao Chang instructed his subordinates, "Act according to my expression once we get there. You know what to do without me having to teach you." Seeing someone knock at the door, I opened it. "What's going on, comrades? Can we discuss a little? Can you let us in here to cool off?" But just then, a chubby little boy spotted the fried chicken on the table. Without hesitation, he rushed towards it. "Mommy, fried chicken. I want to eat fried chicken." In this apocalypse, I couldn't differentiate between big or small and immediately kicked the boy out. Everyone questioned me. "How can you be so ruthless to a child?" I coldly replied, "You should take better care of your child. If not, I wouldn't mind helping you manage a little." Clearly, these words captured everyone's attention. "Someone like you doesn't deserve to stay in this room." After saying that, they charged at me. For me, this didn't worry me at all. I only heard a loud bang as a bullet whizzed through the crowd, striking a man right in the forehead from behind. I was alone, but the lives of you all were just one. At that moment, Wang Daihai, having lost too much blood along with the heat, succumbed to infection. Now he had stopped breathing. "Shen, this is all you're doing. I won't let you off." Just then, a knock echoed through the air. "Sister Chen, I know you can't bear to shoot us. Have you forgotten how much I love you? Just let us in." "What do you want to do? We will fully cooperate." Hearing this, I opened the door. Such a bond of sisterhood. "If that's the case, come on in." But at that moment, an angry man burst in. "Get out of my way. I will kill you, Sothun. If you want to die, don't blame me. Anyone who enters this door without my permission will meet their end. Next, please." At this point, Jiang Tiothin and the others were too frightened to enter. The weather outside was quite warm, but I coldly declared, "We're not going in." "If that's the case, then hurry up and leave. If you refuse to go, be prepared to pay with your life." Just then, a rescue vehicle arrived at the hotel. The vehicle had been specially modified for thermal insulation. Several soldiers in insulated gear stepped out. "Is Academician Lu Qingquok here? Please, Academician Lu, put on your thermal suit and follow us. The others need not panic." At midnight, the temperature reaches its lowest point of the day. By then, everyone can make their way to the rescue point at Silicon Valley Square. Hearing there was aid, the crowd immediately cheered. "Great. It seems the government hasn't given up on us." At that moment, Director Ton suddenly yelled from behind. "I am Tung Dao, leader of the zombie group. Bring me the thermal gear, and I'll reward you with $1 billion." No sooner had he spoken than he was swiftly apprehended by the soldiers. Academician Liu is our country's geological expert. Please do not impede our operations. Facing the heavily armed soldiers, Cao Kung could only stand there, dumbfounded. At that moment, Jiang Tiuthian suddenly grabbed a soldier's arm. Wait a moment, there's a crazed killer upstairs who has already slain several people. At this, Cao Kung and the others felt the mounting pressure. Yes! That guy has a gun. We can't overlook that madman. Hearing this, the soldier removed his helmet, then lead me up to see. I want to know who you really are. Seeing their goal achieved, Jiang Tiuthian wore a cunning expression. Once Sothun is gone, she could enjoy the comfort of that house. Meanwhile, Tiofeng had stealthily approached the room's door, but spotted a camera hidden in a potted plant. Just as he was taken aback, a flashbang and a tear gas grenade were thrown in succession. Tiofeng exclaimed, "Oh no!" He was instantly blinded, unable to open his eyes, and the stinging smoke made tears stream down his face. What awaited him was Sothun's nightmare. I picked up the documents and discovered that it was Liu Tiofeng, the deputy captain of the Special Forces. Upon waking, Liu Tiofeng interrogated, "Who the hell are you?" I replied, "I'm just a recent graduate." The firearm was something I picked up casually while traveling in the Middle East. You must know that the government has set up rescue points, right? I planned for the residents to come on their own in the dead of night. As soon as he finished speaking, Liu Xiaofeng froze. How do you know this? The reason I know so well is because I experienced it in my previous life. Even if the morning temperature drops, being exposed to the moonlight for more than a minute will still leave you dazed. Many will perish on the way to the rescue point. Liu Xiaofeng said there was no other way. If not, people would die even faster. Reluctantly, we had to let them go on their own. At that moment, I gently patted his shoulder. In fact, thick blankets and down jackets do provide insulation. If you don't fall, you can increase your survival rate. After saying that, I aimed my gun at the back of his neck. Seeing this, Liu Xiaofeng immediately signaled to his brothers. Wait a moment, let me report about the blankets first. You can kill me, it's fine. He reassured me, don't worry, I won't call for help. But soon after, I cut the ropes binding him. Liu Xiaofeng looked at me with suspicion. I respect the efforts the government has made, so this time I'll spare you. But I won't forgive the multiple provocations from your side. Liu Xiaofeng retorted, aren't you afraid I'll leave and call for help to deal with you? After saying that, I gestured for him to look up at what was there. It turned out to be a machine gun tower equipped with facial recognition cameras. Where did you get that? I replied. I told you, I brought it back from the Middle East. With just one pull, the entire room would be wiped out. Except for me, no one would survive. But in this chaotic situation, I guess you won't have the time to pay attention to me. Before long, Liu Xiaofeng had donned his thermal suit and stepped outside. Damn it, does the guy upstairs really have that much power? Even the soldiers can't do anything to him. He said, then threw a powerful punch at Gao Chang. What am I keeping you all for? Useless bunch. Seeing Shen Debao's arrogance, everyone felt a burning rage. Gao Chang's subordinates could no longer contain themselves. Boss, how much longer do we have to put up with him? But Gao Chang looked troubled. Right now, we can't touch him. We need to leverage his connections in the future. He shot a disdainful glare. The apocalypse has arrived, yet Boss Gao still dreams of restoring order. When Ziwan appeared, Gao Chang's subordinates immediately erupted in anger. Hey kid, what did you just say? Believe it or not, I'll kill you right here. But he was stopped by Gao Chang. Seeing me come down, he couldn't help but feel scared and asked why I was there. Nothing, I just wanted to make a deal with Boss Gao. Then I poured ice cubes from the thermos. Upon seeing the ice, both of them were immediately taken aback. Ice cubes, boss. There must be a lot of other cool stuff in his room. Kill him and everything will belong to us. Witnessing this scene, I aimed my gun at his throat. The man with long hair cooperated well, raising his hands high. Gao Chang chuckled awkwardly. Su, my brother, don't compare yourself to this brute. We should discuss the deal first. After finalizing the terms, Cao Kung greedily indulged in the icy delight, never imagining that such a simple piece of ice could bring them such satisfaction. The two of them decided to take advantage of the boy's distraction and eliminate him right then and there. Just at that moment, Sun Dukbao cursed and kicked him. What do you think you are? Enjoying that ice-cold drink all by yourself? If I catch you doing that again, I swear I'll kill you. After saying that, he kicked Cao Kung right in the head. Unbeknownst to him, Cao Kung was seething with anger, wanting to kill Sun Dukbao for what Shothun had said. Meanwhile, Sun Dukbao casually admired his ice cube when he accidentally spotted someone standing behind him with a dark expression. Wasn't that Duangui? In this sweltering heat, why don't you take off that shirt? Such arrogance. But I have to admit, I'm quite fond of girls like you. It's truly bizarre. Since I'm feeling excited right now, why don't you come to bed with me? But Duangui turned around and slapped him. You scoundrel! Don't you dare touch me! Seeing this, Sun Dukbao immediately erupted in rage. You bastard! I'll deal with you right here. Let everyone taste the pain. Look at how drenched you are. My blade hasn't been used in a while, so let me help you shed those clothes. Just then, a cold voice echoed from behind. Sun Dukbao, you've gone too far. It was Cao Kung. Angered, Sun Dukbao shouted at him, I've given you face. Do you even know who you're talking to? But what he received in return was a cold blade in Cao Kung's hand. Shothun was right. Don't let the atmosphere fool you. You're still here babbling. I've tolerated you for far too long, so prepare to die. His frigid gaze swept over everyone. Now, this place belonged to Cao Kung. The others either helped save people or faced death themselves. Upon hearing this, Duangui was utterly shocked. Did Cao Kung intend to dominate this place? Meanwhile, I quietly observed from above. It seemed that Cao Kung was influenced by the earlier words. In his previous life, he had been the overlord here. If he wanted things to progress faster now, would I miss my chance to seize the opportunity? Soon, Zhang Tuthin and her best friend approached, asking for water from Cao Kung, saying they were ready to do anything. After Cao Kung had his fill, he immediately tossed the remaining ice water to the two girls. If that's the case, then follow me, but whether you survive or not depends on you. One of them asked, Aren't we going to the rescue point, Strang? Plus, we don't have many supplies left. Why should we accommodate these useless people? Hearing this, Cao Kung let out a cold laugh. Didn't Shothun want to keep a few people below? We also need some sacrifices. In the blink of an eye, it was midnight. Zhang Tuthian and her friend had made their preparations and were finally ready to leave this cursed place. But just then, Trung Mao yanked the blanket off the two girls. If you're drinking ice water from Gao, do you still want to leave, Waswings? That's your fault. You'd rather stay and chat with me than go. Didn't you say you'd do anything? Meanwhile, everyone else moved toward the rescue point. Ever since Cao Kung took control of the supplies, they had received neither a drop of water nor a morsel of food. Better to die of thirst in the hotel than to gamble on the chance of reaching the rescue point, where a glimmer of hope still shone. But outside, the heat was more intense than imagined. Despite having strapped wooden boards to the soles of their shoes, they could still feel the scorching heat rising from the ground. Suddenly, an old woman lost her footing and fell, her mouth and hands instantly oozing blood. The others were too preoccupied with their own survival to care about the lives of others. Soon, several people had perished from their falls on the peninsula. Meanwhile, Jiang Shaoxian and her best friend began to panic. Big brother, stop joking. We're going to coordinate with you. Hearing this, Trung Thung laughed heartily. You two, have you finally learned to feel shame? Are you afraid of me or of the monsters? But just at that moment, a pair of red claws shattered the window. It turned out to be Vung Daihai and Sun Dukbao bursting in. Due to the searing heat, both had transformed into flesh-eating zombies. At that moment, Cao Kung and the others were struck with fear. Would they, too, be bitten and become zombies? Seeing this, Cao Kung immediately tightened his grip on the throat of the useless man. Try it if you dare. Just then, I slowly stepped forward. Get out of the way. These two are mine. Trung Mao looked at me with a face full of shock. Could this kid be planning to face the zombies alone? The more Cao Kung thought, the more he calculated. Once he kills the zombies, we will take him down together. These corpses, after being burned, would mutate, yet they couldn't transmit the virus. They were akin to the entities described in the classic of mountains and seas. Thus, Shothun referred to them as Hanbat. These hanbats still retained some memories from their previous lives, which could be described as obsessions. In his past life, Cao Kung killed Sun Duk Bao, making him the first hanbat driven by that obsession. And Cao Kung was his target for revenge. As for Vung Dai Hai, he became a hanbat because I had killed him. Therefore, Cao Kung's real threat was not Vung Dai Hai, but rather hanbat Sun Duk Bao. This opportunity, I, Shothun, must seize. With that said, I immediately cleaved Sun Duk Bao in two. From Sun Duk Bao's corpse fell a purple crystal. It seemed this was the crystal that granted immense physical strength. If that were the case, I would have to reluctantly accept it. As for the remaining hanbat, you can take your time dealing with him. Cao Kung, you all stay here with him. Hearing this, Cao Kung was furious, his face turning pale. After speaking, he immediately tightened his grip on the throat of the useless man and stood up. With a shove, he pushed him into the arms of Vung Dai Hai, forcefully shoving both him and Vung Dai Hai outside. Damn it, everyone grab your weapons. Meanwhile, I was leisurely sipping wine in the room. In this apocalyptic world, fierce tug-of-war battles between humans and mutated beasts occasionally arose. Among 100 creatures, one might carry gold. Then, I swallowed the gold along with the wine, and instantly my eyes glowed with a fierce red, clearly beginning to absorb energy from the gold. A searing wave of heat ignited every cell within me. The high temperature scorched my very flesh, and in an instant, a violent pain crashed over me, forcing a scream from my lips. Before I knew it, darkness enveloped me, unable to bear the torment any longer. Outside the towering walls, they had dealt with Vung Dai Hai. But in doing so, they had exhausted every drop of water. Just then, Chang Mao caught hold of a pair of long legs. You scoundrel, do you really think you can escape? Do you believe I won't cut your legs off? At that moment, my best friend quickly interjected. Big brother, we're out of water. We're going to die of thirst. I have a plan to deal with Sothun. Zhang Tiothian is his fiancée. If we strike him right at the entrance, Sothun will have no choice but to open the door. At that moment, you can seize the opportunity to attack him. Yet, Zhang Tiothian countered, there's no need for that. I can coordinate with you without any conditions. What if I want to feast on flesh right now? Hearing those words, Cao Kung shot a cold glance at Zhang Tiothian. If you want to eat flesh, then you can do it yourself. Zhang Tiothian seemed taken aback. Are you saying his flesh? After a moment of contemplation, she swiftly snatched the short knife from Cao Kung's grasp. Without hesitation, she advanced towards her best friend. At that point, her friend was clearly terrified. Tioqian, we are best friends. You can't do this. But Zhang Tiothian merely regarded her coldly. Don't spout nonsense about friendship. Didn't you say you'd deal with me? And don't blame me for being merciless. With that, she plunged the short knife into her friend's abdomen. Cao Kung and the others stood by, dumbfounded. These women were every bit as fierce as men in their actions. At that moment, Zhang Tiothian had succumbed to a frenzy. Wait for me to finish my meal. Go take Sothun's life. This was Cao Kung's suggestion to Duangui, so he could cook the meat thoroughly, fortifying the brothers to confront Sothun. Where's Duangui? Hurry and find him. At the same time, my own abilities had completed their transformation. Was this the power of physical enhancement? I could clearly feel my body's endurance increasing significantly. My muscles and strength had surged to new heights. Energy coursed through me, ready to explode. But just then, I spotted Duangui's figure on the surveillance screen. Duangui remarked that Cao Kung and the others had gone insane. This was his only hope for survival. Please, let me in. But I had forgotten that I was completely bare. Is something wrong? Duangui didn't respond. He merely stared at me, bewildered, while I quickly donned my clothes. Clearing my throat awkwardly, I said, I'm sorry. My resources are limited, and we've only just met. I can't take you in just because you're beautiful. Duangui explained, I'm not just a chef. I'm also an outstanding student at Southwest Medical University with a professional qualification. With 3 years of experience as a surgeon, I fell into deep thought upon hearing this. In my past life, Duannu was a remarkably resilient woman, and between her and Cao Qiang existed a partnership. While I had considered the idea of winning her over, the current atmosphere felt somewhat awkward. Being a doctor truly offered an alluring advantage. Yet the resources were alarmingly scarce, no one knew if they would survive until tomorrow. Hearing this, Duan immediately spoke up. As long as you don't drive me away, I can do anything for you. Seeing her determination, I smiled. If Miss Duan has said so, then consider this place your home. It was then that Duan realized she had spoken too much in her haste. I quickly shifted my tone, but I must warn you, the only thing you need to do in my presence is to obediently listen. Do not harbor any ill intentions, or else. Rest assured, master, I have never doubted your abilities and determination. Hearing this, I regarded him with a rather unkind gaze. Then strip off your clothes immediately. Of course, but first you need to take a shower. Through the surveillance screen, I monitored his every move. This action wasn't for prying, but merely to ensure he had no ulterior motives. After he finished bathing, he had changed into another outfit. Hey, this one seems a bit small, doesn't it? I pretended to be serious. Nothing is small about it, it fits perfectly. But just then, urgent knocking echoed from outside. Chen, open the door. If you don't come out, you'll die. Duan beside me reminded, we must not open the door. Cao Chang and his group have devoured a person. If we open it, we might meet the same fate. Hearing this, I felt a surge of excitement. You say they've eaten a person, Smerminth. Well, that makes things easier. Without a moment's hesitation, I opened the door. At this point, Cao Chang and his companions had lost all semblance of humanity. Chen, you finally dare to step outside. Just as I was about to step out, one of Cao Chang's hidden subordinates lunged at me with a knife in hand. But I swiftly seized his arm, countered his attack, and brought him down. With a sharp crack, I broke his arm. Cao Chang looked on in disbelief. How did this kid react so quickly? At the same moment, Zhang Xiaoshan had freed herself from her bindings and rushed towards me. In the blink of an eye, she stood before me. Shen, save me. Little did I expect, I clutched her throat tightly because I knew that once they tasted human flesh, their bodies would undergo a horrifying transformation. Fangs would sprout forth. Clearly, they were no longer human. This truly was the apocalypse. As long as one survived, it mattered not whether they were man or demon. What does it matter to be human? With my grip firm on Zhang Xiaoxian's throat, she laughed heartily. The meat tastes so delicious. After feasting, I felt an overwhelming surge of power. Therefore, Shen, I could hardly wait any longer. But before he could finish speaking, I delivered a powerful kick, sending him crashing against the window before plummeting down. Little did I know, Zhang Xiaoshan managed to cling to the windowsill with one hand. I, the god of war, will not let you go easily. But then, I sensed that something was amiss. The temperature outside soared, and he simply couldn't withstand it. At that moment, a spear flew towards me. I couldn't allow him the chance to draw his gun. Thinking this, I couldn't help but scorn. Why waste bullets on trash like you? Don't underestimate others. God of war, he shouted as he lunged toward me. Yet, I wasn't hesitant to waste a bullet on him. Cao Kung signaled his men to spread out. The transformation not only made him stronger, but also far more agile. While Cao Kung and his gang were bracing themselves against my bullet, they were utterly unreachable. So let's see you die. But just as I finished speaking, I held the long-haired guy's head firmly. Have you said enough? If so, then you can die now. With that, I slammed his head hard against the ground. Just then, the bald guy charged at me with a knife. Seeing this, I quickly grabbed his arm, seizing the opportunity. Cao Kung rushed in to throw a punch at me, but in the next second, I seized his neck. I lifted him high and smashed him against the wall. At that moment, a 40-meter-long tongue suddenly appeared from behind. Turning around, I realized it was Jiang Tuthin. She screamed at me, I can't believe you've transformed like this. Clearly, she was haunted by my presence. Immediately after, I snapped Cao Kung's neck. Jiang Tuthin continued to scream, and I noticed strange cracking sounds coming from her as sharp thorns began to sprout from her body. If you won't let go, then I'll have to kill you once more. At that moment, Duan, who was watching the chaos unfold, observed every move. The god of war is too powerful he can handle Cao Kung's gang alone, but the situation was perilous. Could the god of war manage this? To stay by his side in the future, I had to prove I wasn't a burden. At the same time, I noticed his actions and turned to look back. I couldn't tell where he got a small whip from. Seeing that, it felt like I was dreaming. What kind of lesson did this woman still want to teach? Hearing this, Duan suddenly blushed. Why not? She just wants to help you. Immediately, he roared at me. Do you two really treat me like air? After that, he bared his fangs and lunged at me. I merely glanced at him with disdain, unafraid, allowing him to crash into my chest. Witnessing this, Duangui beside me immediately covered her mouth in fear. However, Tanchuk's attack, although seemingly clever, only tore my shirt. My body remained unscathed, not even a scratch. This infuriated Tanchuk further. Once again, she went berserk, extending her claws toward my neck, yet I stood still, letting her assault. Then, Tanchuk opened her tiny mouth, as fierce as a cherry, and bit down on my shoulder. But no matter how much strength she had, her teeth couldn't pierce my skin, not even a millimeter. Seizing the moment, I mocked her. Your teeth are just for showing off. It's time for me to take action. After speaking, I grabbed her arms with both hands, threw her hard to the ground, and kicked her back hard. Then I coldly asked Chinzu, "Are you ready?" I immediately broke his arm and only saw Ice Bamboo's body hit the ground, screaming in pain. At the same time, I also returned to the ground. I just want you to experience some difficulties at the end of the world. But if you are determined to seek death, I must do as you wish today. The next scene made me feel a chill. I saw Ice Bamboo stretch out its 40-meter-long tail, roll up the body of a person next to it, open its cherry-like mouth, and swallow the body directly. Not long after, the body was left with only one shoe. The next moment, his broken hand suddenly moved. Then he roared, and the broken hand grew out as if nothing had happened. He looked at me angrily, as if he wanted to eat me. "You can't kill me," he shouted at me, which was an unexpected fact for me. He almost screamed in surprise. What should we do now? But I just smiled faintly and didn't care, which proves that it's difficult for you to die easily. This means I can torture you many times. If I can take away your regenerative ability, your chances of surviving in the end of the world will increase many times. When the sound of Ice Bamboo rings again, I will grab his arm and turn into a zombie that is still so powerful. Let me see. How many times can this body grow? I started with my left arm. After speaking, I immediately grabbed his left arm. Now it's his right arm. When Ice Bamboo struggled, I didn't give him any chance. Without hesitation, I pulled off his right arm. At that moment, I placed him on the ground. Now the tail and legs. This is your first time. After another time, the 4 legs and tail of Ice Bamboo began to move. Soon, he returned to his original state. He could only lie on the ground, gasping for breath in despair. But I just smiled, and then I would do it again. In the surprised gaze of Duanyu, I would continue to cut the Ice Bamboo into pieces. Now Bingju has been tortured to the point where he has almost no resistance. Thinking of everything he has done to me in the past, I have pulled out my tongue and internal organs for the 4th, 5th, 8th, and even more. His internal organs have been dug out, as if only his brain cannot regenerate. Now Bingju asks you with grievance why you did this. You still have the face to ask me why I have been kneeling down to you for 2 years since the moment I met you. During those 2 years, I gave you 51,000 yuan. I sacrificed so much, but in exchange for anything, it was all your voluntary choice. I didn't force you. Listen, my eyes are cold. You didn't force me, but why do you keep giving me hope but pouring a bucket of cold water on me? Do you know how much pain I have suffered in the past 2 years? Because of money, you colluded with that bastard and even humiliated me in front of me. Now I only want revenge, and from now on, you will never have the opportunity to hurt anyone again. Thinking of this, I slowly closed my eyes, and Duan Chuan immediately asked Chu Chen anxiously if he was okay. I coldly turned back to look at him. Are you ready? This question left Duan Chuan at a loss, so I held him tightly in my arms. What should you reward me for my strong performance just now? At the same time, the battle for the Apocalypse rescue has begun, and the temperature has returned to normal. Captain, there is a group of people approaching the rescue point over there. This is not a person, but a corpse. Immediately organize people to evacuate the rescue site, and I will stop them. This is an order. After continuous attacks on circuit breakers, go see the Greentown Hotel quickly. I have completely conquered this little girl, and I must meet 2 conditions. The first is a valuable person, and the second is someone who absolutely obeys. It's time to go out. In the past, many people were obsessed with rescue. This ultimately led to attacks on rescue sites, with many civilians and soldiers killed in the attacks, resulting in a large number of weapons falling into civilian hands, forming various forces that stopped in front of the car in front of me. Yes, these bandits were me, but my temper was not good for them. I stepped on the accelerator and collided directly with the rioters, causing them to fly far away. Then I drove all the way away because the high temperature in the fire area caused the walls to crack, coupled with the attack of corpses, ultimately leading to the collapse of the subway station, with an estimated death toll of thousands. Unfortunately, not everyone has a golden head. If you deal with this one by one, it's a waste of time. So I decided to take a look at the school's situation first. But when I entered the school's experimental building, a group of thugs stopped me. "You handed me your backpack." I immediately took out a chicken leg from my pocket, and the thugs were ecstatic. They hadn't seen a chicken leg for several days, let alone eaten it. So I smiled and threw the chicken leg on the ground. 3 thugs rushed in. "This is mine. Go away." But the next second I pulled the chicken leg back with a rope, which surprised the 3 thugs. "What the hell?" The 3 thugs were angry. I said that they took up baseball bats, intending to hit me, but I immediately pulled out my gun and fired 3 shots, dealing with the 3 of them. It's strange I don't recall there being so many fools in my previous life. Perhaps it was because I had warned them, leading to this situation. Then I went to the reptile laboratory, where reptiles and foul odors were everywhere. Soon I found what I needed. Shanghai Glass's King Chujing. It turned out to be this. In the past life, it was this snake that began to resist mutations, to the point where I almost got swallowed up by it. 1 week after the flood hit, it will begin to mutate, and I don't know how much it will resist this time. It seems that I have evolved a bit of wisdom, and if you don't fight back, it will be troublesome. But just then, a sudden voice came from behind, and I turned around and looked, and indeed, someone rolled out. "I knew you were hiding here." At the critical moment of taming Wang Jingtou, she must not be disturbed by the rioters, but at that moment, a beautiful figure appeared. This girl was like a stray cat, kicking 1 foot on the rioter's head and gripping one hand with the other. She defeated the rioters without any resistance, and when the last rioter broke his neck, the 3 rioters were completely eliminated. But at that moment, a black gun was pointed at the back of her head. The wildcat quickly used its elbow to shoot the gun away, but Chen punched her to the ground and asked about her identity. She introduced herself and said, "I am the captain of the White Tiger Special Forces." Liu Xiaofeng, do you remember I once saved his life? And Chen was roasting cows and wildcats, telling the story of this incident. When the zombies attacked, Xiaofeng led the people to retreat, but did not expect the guilty to hide inside. These people took advantage of the opportunity to steal weapons and take over the school. They also took hundreds of students hostage to deal with the army. After hearing that Chen bit a cow, you can't completely blame them. After that, you untied the rope of the stray cat and gave her a sniper rifle. I have my job, so I can only give you some knowledge about firepower. After speaking, I turned around and prepared to leave. But the wildcat said, "I want to raid those criminals' nests. Only by retrieving the supplies inside can I save the students." She immediately gestured for the wildcat to wait, reached into her pocket, and took out an AWM sniper rifle. "Xiaofeng is my brother, and I will go with you." Soon after, they arrived at the school administration building and saw a fierce man. They hit 2 beautiful girls and asked the children how their work was progressing. The children replied, "We are ready, and we will catch them this time. Let those who refuse to listen step forward." But just then, the door was kicked open with a loud bang. "Sorry to interrupt your meeting," a voice echoed ominously. The leader was immediately taken aback. With over 20 guards outside, how could anyone get in? Hearing this, Sothun shot a glare at his subordinate. "You want to know how I got in?" He slowly raised his right hand, and just like that, a sharp gunshot rang out, sending his henchman crashing to the floor, a bullet lodged in his head. The room erupted in sheer terror. How could someone die from just a light touch? What the hell was happening? Yet Sothun merely glanced at them, his voice cold and cutting. "Don't move, or you'll die." The gang leader, however, thought Sothun was just bluffing. "Kill him," he barked at his allies. But before the command could even settle in the air, he too was silenced by a bullet to the head. It turned out he and the wildcat had already plotted their plan. The wildcat would cover him from an elevated position while Sothun's role was to create chaos. However, the sheer number of people inside worried the wildcat about Sothun's safety. Just as her thoughts spiraled into seriousness, curtains in the room were suddenly pulled aside. The wildcat panicked and instantly called Sothun through her earpiece. Hearing the screams of the crowd preparing to attack Sothun, she knew time was of the essence. If she delayed, Sothun would surely perish. Just a moment later, a voice crackled through her earpiece. "Kill him." This only deepened the wildcat's anxiety. Damn it! In the blink of an eye, she dashed into the room. "I'm here to avenge you," but what she saw left her utterly stunned. "You're too late. There's no more supplies here." She was undeniably a seductive and fiery underground queen, yet she harbored a disturbingly twisted hobby. Every day, she hung herself for a grueling 25 hours, even compelling her subordinates to whip her with barbed leather. Only by enduring such pain could she awaken her own power. In that moment, after dispatching the Black Boss's apprentice, the Black Boss continued to scream, "You can't kill me. My people will never forgive you." But Sothun only replied coldly, "Don't worry, you'll let them meet you soon." Seeing the situation, Tomio was left speechless. What about those students? Hearing this, Sothun pondered for a moment. "I can spare them some, but it depends on their performance." "Let's go to the girls' dormitory first," he said, already aware that Tiufeng and the other students were gathered there. Meanwhile, in the school's administrative building, that guy was running around, unsure if he would die this time. The masked man immediately ordered his subordinates to drop him and asked, "Have you found the feeling you were looking for?" Hearing this, the sister only sighed. "It feels like standing on the brink of death." "Truly marvelous. I need your comfort, Kamrang." At that moment, the masked man shot him a glance. Really, without warning, he lashed out with his whip. "So how does it feel now?" Watching her lick her lips, he could tell she was enjoying it far more than before. The masked man asked, "Have you ever seen anyone steal my resources?" The sister shook her head. He was a demon, but the masked man still wanted to know his name, so she slowly said 4 words. Chu Chen and Xiao Miao also arrived at Xiao Feng's girls' dormitory. When they saw Chu Chen, they asked him why he was here. Upon hearing this, Xiao Miao was confused. "Isn't he your lifesaver?" Seeing the situation, Chu Chen immediately changed the subject and showed me your injuries. Chu Chen could tell from Xiao Feng's wound that it was definitely caused by poison. Their nails were covered in bacteria and viruses. If they didn't take the medicine, they might be in danger. But now, we can't look for medicine anymore. If this continues, Xiao Feng is just waiting for death, but Chu Chen casually threw a few pills at him. "Where did you get so many medicines from?" But Chu Chen is very calm. "I told you, I am his lifesaver. In the past life, there was a person whose power was equivalent to a nuclear bomb, known as Fengshen. If that person is Xiao Feng, Chu Chen's investment is definitely not real. Xiao Feng also knows not to eat or take others, so to be frank, if you have any purpose, just say it directly." But now, Chu Chen's gaze suddenly becomes cold. "The upcoming flood, I suggest you retreat as soon as possible. The high temperature causes the ice to melt quickly, and then the entire school will be flooded." Suddenly, a girl begins to question where the flood came from. Fang Qing is the daughter of a wealthy family and a famous feminist who likes to cause trouble between men and women. She then asked Chu Chen if she had any food, and she walked up to try to catch her, but Chu Chen was not so easy. He slapped her hard. Seeing this, Fang Qing was very angry. "You dared to hit me," but before Chu Chen could speak, the classmates behind urged him to leave quickly. With a few dollars at home, Fang Qing dared to be arrogant, but even so, she kept screaming, "I will have my dad kill all of you vulgar men." After speaking, she ran out crying, especially that Chu Chen, who will definitely give you a bad ending. But just then, a pair of big hands appeared, "Little baby," asking me where Chu Chen is. At the same time, Chu Chen also bid farewell to them. Now, he only needed to wait for the mutation of Dragon King Qing, and then he could control the water. But just then, a voice came from behind, and Chu Chen saved me. Upon hearing these words, Chu Chen turned around. Fang Qing had already been lifted high by a masked man using a forklift. The masked man shouted loudly, "I am the teeth zinc of the cleaning base. You are Chen, who took away our resources, aren't you? I thought you were a three-headed and six-armed person." Upon hearing this, Chen's eyes lit up. "You are from the evolution base," and the masked man confirmed it. "I even prepared a special meeting for you." After speaking, he opened the car door and saw dozens of bodies emerging from the carriage. "Are you ready to die, Chen? Don't mess with this man. Otherwise, he will give you a gentle pull and easily break your neck or even pull out your spine, which will make the little cat standing next to you stunned. This is definitely not a power that ordinary people can possess." What kind of monster is he? Just now, the kitten also noticed something unusual ahead, so the two of them decided to go and take a look. When the mask appeared, he became even more arrogant. "Chen, I'll give you a hero's chance to save the beauty. As long as you kneel down and beg me, I will release this girl." "Listen," Chen replied that saving her is not impossible, but before she could finish speaking, Fang Qing interrupted her. "Chen, please kneel down and save me." "But there's a problem with saving you." "Listen, Fang Qing is angry. What's the problem with saving me? You just said you wanted to save me, and then she couldn't help but scream. You said you wanted to save me. Why did you change your mind? Are you a man?" Chen just smiled and said, "Is it a man who has nothing to do with you and am not worthy of saving you? Why don't I contact a gentleman abroad and see who wants to save you?" Fang Qing was very angry after hearing these words. "Just because I said you were a vulgar man, you avenged yourself like this. Chen, do you think I will apologize to you and then beg you to save me? The fact proves that you are a vulgar man. I don't need you, a vulgar man, to save me." But Chen just smiled and pointed at her feet. "So I hope you remember what you said." But in an instant, Fang Qing turned into a zombie meal. Seeing this scene, the masked person burst out laughing. "You are a cruel person, but you will soon come down to see our purification base's technology with her. As long as these powders are applied to these monsters, they will listen to you." But Chen said you are just wiping ashes, which really makes them think you are of the same kind. Upon hearing this news, the masked man immediately vomited. "Cough, cough, it's really disgusting. I even tried 2 bites." But at this moment, he didn't care too much and immediately ordered the zombie to tear Chen apart. Chen appeared very at ease and pushed the zombie away with both hands. Then, a long sword appeared with both hands and cut through the zombie, leaving a smooth incision. Then he gracefully fell to the ground, and the masked man screamed to death. "You dare to joke with me," but in a second, he found Chen appearing in front of him. At the same time, Xiao Miao and Xiao Feng couldn't keep up with the scene in front of them, which made them both feel hopeless. Not good. Chen is already surrounded by zombies. At the same time, the masked man looked at the war dog, motionless, and couldn't help but scream. "What are they doing there? Deal with it quickly." But Chen just waved his hand to signal him to calm down. "Your screaming is useless. They won't have any reaction." Upon hearing this, the masked man was somewhat puzzled. Hearing Chen's faint words, he realized that your shouting was in vain. It was only at this moment that the man woke up and thought to himself, "How could this happen? It was only for a moment. I don't want to have anything to do with your evolutionary base." And then he grabbed your mask with one hand. "Why are you bothering us?" Only the sound of the masked man's snap was heard, and his spine was pulled out. Xiao Miao, standing next to him, was immediately stunned. This power was too terrifying, and it was definitely not enough to just practice to determine what kind of monster Chen was. This time, Chen also realized that it was too cruel, if only he had a capable helper. These times, in the sleeping Green City Hotel, Duanwei was suddenly awakened by a roar. Remembering what Chen had said, he vowed not to become a burden to the lazy Duanwei. Then he placed the gun on the table, and "I wanted to be your right-hand man." Then he began searching for sound, but strangely, there was no one in the room. Finally, Wang Qing experienced her first evolution after the end of the world, but it was also her last evolution because she not only refused to obey Chen, but also naively wanted to strangle him. He took out a piece of metal from his mind and said, "I want to see what you can bring me in a second." Just now, Duanwei didn't know when the zombie appeared behind him, but just as he tried to retreat, he realized that the furniture behind him blocked his way, causing Duanwei to break into a cold sweat. Suddenly, the thought of the gun flashed in his mind, and he reached out to grab it. However, before he could pull it off, a zombie unexpectedly knocked him aside, its decaying legs spreading wide as it prepared to pounce once more. Duanwei thought to himself, "This time, I'm done for." But to his surprise, the zombie lunged at him, exclaiming, "What are you really doing? Why do you keep flaunting yourself?" Upon closer inspection, he realized that this zombie was, in fact, a grotesque shrimp. Yet even so, it was still overwhelmingly powerful. A mere whisper could trigger an attack. Thus, he struggled to flatten himself against the table, desperately trying to retrieve the gun. If he could just get his hands on it, everything would be fine. But a slight misstep caused a noise to escape, and Duanwei immediately sensed the impending danger as the zombie charged toward him. At that moment, he recalled the words of Sothun, who had said that finding the essence within a monster would grant him power. "I don't want to be seen as useless by Sothun," Duanwei vowed silently, determination igniting within him. He thrust his high heel into the right eye of Hanbat with all his might, but as Hanbat thrashed about, the heel snapped in two. Left with no choice, Duanwei shifted to his other foot and kicked again. This time, Hanbat caught on to his intention and swiftly grasped Duanwei's slender leg. Seeing the situation unfold, Duanwei felt alarmed and immediately increased the force in his leg, driving the toe of his shoe into Hanbat's other eye. He then lifted his leg high, causing Hanbat to kneel down in agony. Duanwei's gaze darted towards the fire axe nearby. "Sothun, do you see this? I am not useless. Let me see if your brain truly holds the essence." At the same time, in the girls' dormitory, Tiu Dameo had contacted her brother, Bakmei, asking him to come protect the students. Meanwhile, Sothun was watching Volcanic, noticing it was on the verge of mutation. Intrigued by how far this creature could transform, he prepared a large tub of water, telling his wife that as long as it jumped in, the mutation would be completed without hesitation. As soon as it touched the water, Volcanic instantly morphed into a fierce dragon, horns sprouting from its head. Lum Ting and Sothun could only watch the tub in awe. Who could have anticipated that mere seconds later, a powerful explosion would erupt, transforming Volcanic into a colossal dragon beast? If it could mutate so greatly outside, imagine the danger if a flood hit. Swiftly, Sothun drew a long sword. "If you submit right now, perhaps I will consider making you my pet." But unexpectedly, the dragon beast didn't utter a word as it charged out the window. "This one seems quite clever," Sothun thought, leaping out after it. Upon seeing this, the dragon roared fiercely, but Sothun was not one to let it escape easily. He twisted the sword in hand and plunged it firmly into the beast's body. It was utterly surprising that its scales were so hard they could even shatter a sword. Witnessing this, the evil dragon became even more frenzied, roaring and attempting to crush Sothun's head. However, Sothun was not someone to be easily bullied. If weapons failed against him, he would resort to his fists to finish you off. Channeling his strength into his right hand, he delivered a powerful punch to the dragon's head. To his astonishment, the dragon reacted quickly, trying to coil tightly around him. Caught off guard, he could only watch as the dragon wrapped itself around him. It seemed that its previous attacks were merely feints. This was its true intention. With that, the dragon opened its bloody maw wide, silently preparing to swallow Sothun whole. Unexpectedly, Sothun landed a fierce slap across the dragon's face, immediately seizing it and lifting it high. No one could have imagined that this was the way to restrain it. It was said that dragons had highly developed nervous systems, capable of biting even after being decapitated. But if that were the case, he pressed forward, grasping the dragon's tail and using it as a whip, striking the ground a total of 77 times. In the end, the dragon finally could not rise again. Its life came to an end. Afterward, Sothun retrieved a golden box from its head. "Let's see what kind of specter you will bring forth." The apocalypse had arrived, drowning the world in floods overnight. People wished for death, fleeing to the summit of Everest. Yet this man plunged into the rushing waters, for in his hands was a tiny essence. Merging with the water, he not only developed small, tough scales, but also gained the ability to breathe through his skin. Thus, he could swim freely, even possessing extraordinary powers. It turned out that after the scorching heat of 1,000 degrees during the apocalypse, humanity did not welcome rebirth. It was indeed a time of devastating floods. If the heat had shattered humanity's spirit, the ravaging floods would consume civilization itself. Even inland cities like Thungdo could not escape the destruction of the deluge. Only the towering structures remained standing, yet to be submerged. Meanwhile, after absorbing the essence, Sothun swam through the currents. Having received a new lease on life, his body underwent another transformation. Upon contact with water, not only did small, tough scales appear, but his durability also increased significantly. His eyes sharpened, becoming more sensitive to light, as if protected by an additional layer. Although he could not breathe through his mouth or nose, he felt no sense of suffocation. It seemed the essence allowed him to breathe through his skin. While he did not possess the ability to manipulate water, under the current circumstances, it was already quite advantageous. Even swimming upstream back to the Lukthen Hotel was not a daunting task. However, the objects in the water were like mysterious arrows. Currently, the volcanic eruption had reached its peak, yet the sky remained clear for the time being. But as the volcanic ash ascended into the atmosphere, the day of reckoning is drawing near. In the face of this catastrophe, humanity's civilization can only become a laughingstock. If one wishes to avoid being fodder for the beasts, the only way is to elevate their own power. In my past life, after the Great Flood, Chengdu witnessed the rise of numerous formidable forces. The northern region, with its low terrain, became a vast body of water. This area has been seized by the monstrous army of the Ming Serpent and the Lioness. The southern region fell under the control of the cannibalistic Tao tribe, while the western territory was dominated by the forces of the Shu King, and in the east, the tyrant Gao Chang held sway. In my previous life, I was nearly killed by them, but now, both Gao Chang and the Ming Serpent have faced my reckoning. Now, all I need is to obtain the remaining essence, and I will have nothing to fear. However, the Tao tribe is numerous, and the Queen's forces are difficult to locate. As for the Chu King, he might be waiting at the University of Science and Technology. If I can find him first, I can acquire the essence with minimal losses. Yet, due to my negligence, I found myself surrounded by a swarm of aquatic monsters. But for me, this is hardly a concern. At that moment, two men, one stout and the other thin, were clinging to a signal pole, desperately trying to escape. Suddenly, they noticed someone swimming towards them at great speed. As the thin man focused closely, he realized that it was none other than me, Sothun. Unexpectedly, this kid had yet to be swallowed by the waters. If it weren't for the base sending them to monitor me, they wouldn't have been trapped by the floodwaters either. If I reached them, a single kick would send them plummeting into the depths. But the stout man was astonished to discover that behind me lurked a horde of monsters. What in the world are those, and how can Sothun swim so fast? As I advanced, the two men warned me, "We are from the evolution base. I warn you, do not approach her." Upon hearing this, my gaze turned cold and steely. Have their lackeys grown so bold in this lifetime, I might as well investigate the situation at the purification base. So I soared into the air and then came crashing down onto the stout man's head, delivering a powerful kick. The thin man, his face etched with fear, could only watch helplessly. In an instant, the stout man was sent tumbling into the water. Fortunately, the thin man reached out, trying desperately to grasp his hand, signaling for him to hold on tight to the pole. But the stout man exclaimed that he couldn't reach it. The thin man, summoning all his strength, urged, "Don't worry, I will pull you up." Yet the stout man insisted that he let go quickly. If this continues, we will both die. Meanwhile, I perched on the railing, intrigued. Tell me everything that the purification base knows. But the thin man remained resolute. Even if you kill us, we will never speak. Then don't blame me for being ruthless. I, Sothun, am merciless. Suddenly, from beneath the water, the monsters emerged with gigantic claws, directly seizing the stout man's legs. With overwhelming force, the two were swiftly separated, left to watch as the stout man fell prey to the aquatic beasts. Upon witnessing this, I merely observed coldly. That was his own doing. Don't blame me, but at that moment, the thin one couldn't manage much more. My brother is coming to save you. With that, he plunged into the water. Yet, as he entered, he was greeted by the merciless screams of a sea monster. The thin one immediately realized that his fate was sealed. However, in the next moment, he discovered that Sothun had appeared beside him. With a swift stroke, he severed the sea monster from him. After a flurry of strikes, Sothun delivered a powerful blow that dispatched the beast entirely, leaving only the stout and the thin one on the surface of the water. Sothun quickly rescued the two of them. From their lips, he learned that they had only come to observe him. The evolution base was centered around the Science and Technology University. With Ludai Ka and the researchers in the laboratory at its core, they were merely insignificant pawns in this grand scheme. Sothun immediately realized that the rat plague in his previous life was undoubtedly linked to the evolution base. Therefore, he asked the two, "Is there research on mutated rats in the laboratory?" Hearing this, the thin one hesitated. "Only research staff are allowed inside. We truly have no knowledge of this matter." Observing the current situation, Sothun felt the urgency to investigate the laboratory before calamity struck. Meanwhile, in the hotel, Lukthang was fortunate that Duangui had obtained a spirit pearl from Hanbat. Following the method Sothun had instructed, she decided to conduct an experiment. Was it successful? But she quickly realized that the water was rising to her feet. This is wonderful. Sothun will be able to enjoy this endlessly, all because Duangui had awakened her own unique consciousness, allowing her not only to easily manipulate others' minds, but also to transform into any shape she desired. This would undoubtedly provide Sothun with an exhilarating experience. Moments ago, Duangui never imagined the water would rise so swiftly. Her eyes suddenly turned a vivid pink and an enchanting purple aura enveloped her. Then, her eyes widened, unable to contain her astonishment as she gasped, "What is happening? Could it be a success?" Suddenly, she noticed something coiling around her feet. In her moment of confusion, the nameless tendrils constricted around her. Instantly, Duangui felt a slimy and slippery sensation, but soon the tendrils came into view, their heads bristling with sharp spines, staring intently at her. Suddenly, Dr. Tu rushed toward Duangui. With no other choice, she could only clutch him tightly. But right after, the tendrils ensnared his arms, swiftly lifting Duangui into the air. In that moment, she found herself unable to move, but little did she expect that dozens of monsters lurked below. Duangui thought to herself, "This time, it's over." He had not yet adapted to this unusual power, and now he remembered Su Chen's earlier reminder that as long as he found it under the Golden River, he could gain power. But many monsters looked ordinary, so if he didn't know what his power was, he couldn't distinguish their power. Then use your body to feel the changes around you. Try to control the time period with a slight smile, and finally feel this is your little one. Stop for me now. As soon as she finished speaking, dozens of tentacles stopped. Duanya was very happy and uncomfortable now. "Let me stick together like this. You guys wait." She picked up the axe on the table and said, "I'm going to chop at you like chopping vegetables." She was determined to defeat all the axes, waving dozens of tentacles, and was immediately cut in half. After dealing with all of this, Duanya was covered in dust and had only one thought: she must take a shower as soon as possible. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "May I take a shower with you?" Upon hearing these words, Duanya looked back irritably and said, "Who is it?" The person standing there was none other than Su Chen, who was really protecting himself. Seeing Su Chen, Duanya immediately widened her eyes and rushed over to hug him without saying a word. "Great, you're finally back. I'm really worried about you." But she immediately realized something was pressing on her. She pushed Chen away and said, "I hate you not wearing clothes." Then the two of them started playing happily. Then she asked Duanya, "Have you awakened your impulsive temper?" Duanya asked, "How do you know?" Su Chen smiled, "I can feel it from the temperature in your mouth." Duanya was immediately taken aback when she heard this. "You feel it too, so there's nothing to hide from you." Su Chen said, "I have awakened the power to control my thoughts." Su Chen asked him if he could have an impact on food. Duanya replied, "I'm not sure yet. Let's use you for the experiment." Su Chen smiled cunningly and asked, "What should I do?" But soon, Su Chen opened his eyes and saw Duanya blush. How do you want to experiment? She actually wanted to use her brain to influence Su Chen, but then Su Chen burst out with a terrifying purple energy, forming an unidentified monster head behind her broken teeth, which startled her. Is this Su Chen's mental intelligence? Without Su Chen's permission, perhaps he would have collapsed long ago, but Su Chen smiled and said, "This is an interesting power. Next, I will let you practice until your legs become weak." After some turmoil, Su Chen began to teach Duanya how to use strength. Concentrate your energy, use your thoughts to control it, and then start shooting, Duanya asked. Aren't you going to the University of Science and Technology? Do you have time to teach me practice here? Su Chen said, I only have half a day to teach you practice, and you used to graduate from medical school, right? Duanya replied, Yes, is there anything else? Next, I want you to go with me. It's time to unleash your strength. When you were in high school, the man you protected now easily took away the goddess in your heart and is recognized as the #1 female assassin by the evolution base. As soon as she sees your child, she kneels in front of him. Like a female dog, she wagged her tail and begged, please punish me, because she encountered an unprecedented flood at the end of the world. But fortunately, that was enough. So her brother was temporarily rescued without life-threatening situations. She was especially grateful for the gardener's words, knowing that all survivors were here. Regardless of gender or age, everyone must take refuge here because Xianwei often helps people, so this place is our territory. Xianwei is very powerful and can fight against bandits even in the face of them. Do you want to join us? The gardener quickly pointed to Su Chen. First, Wei, take a closer look at who this is. As soon as he heard Xianwei's name, he opened his eyes wide and said, Oh my, is it really you? He walked over to embrace Su Chen and said, I thought you were dead. He glanced at Duanya standing next to him and said, I've seen you before. Aren't you the famous ice and snow goddess in our department? Duanya said, this is just a post-apocalyptic event with no value, but Xianwei still couldn't believe it. How could the legendary goddess appear here and dress like a bunny girl? Duanya leaned against Su Chen and said, I'm going to change clothes. Wearing it in front of his junior brother was a bit awkward, and Su Chen gestured that he should also change his clothes. Seeing this, Xianwei gritted his teeth in anger and said, how could he hold the goddess? It's really annoying. But he still said to Duanya, it's a bit messy here, if you want to change clothes. Then Wei asked a question first. I don't think you guys brought a bag. How can you change clothes? When Su Chen didn't answer, he asked, is it dangerous for you to go out frequently to carry out missions? Xianwei replied, danger is inevitable. From your clean appearance, I know you are not someone who has experienced the test of the end of the world, and you will join my extramarital affair team. Fortunately, I can take care of you, like Duanya, and medical school graduates don't even need to go out to search for food. Just take care of the wounded here. But there's one thing I have to remind you of. Su Chen is here. Remember not to show off and let my goddess dress up as a bunny girl and run around. Don't you think this is the end of the world? Upon hearing these words, Xianwei immediately tapped his head and said, Don't worry, I forgot why the people who were bullied in high school didn't dare to retaliate. Didn't Xianwei help you drive away those people? And you have to be careful of that chubby captain. The women he likes won't have a good outcome, especially Duanya, the most outstanding woman among goddesses. She definitely won't miss it easily. Just as Duanya was changing clothes in the room, a dagger pressed tightly against her neck and said, Don't move. This person was the woman who used to be called Sister Na. Captain Guo sent me to help you arrange your accommodation. After all, we are all women. Knowing that she couldn't sleep with these stinky men, Captain Guo specially entrusted me to take you there. Upon hearing this news, Duanya immediately refused not needed, and at the same time, she activated her mental control. She only saw the brain suddenly make a buzzing sound and was immediately controlled by Duanya and released her hand. Although Duanya has mastered her brain power, the control time is still very short. She can still deal with ordinary people in a short period of time. Then she stood up and prepared to notify Su Chen outside, but Najie was really vicious. Without hesitation, she stabbed her own palm with her hand. This woman was too cruel to herself. She forced herself to calm down with a painful feeling and then controlled her teeth, almost trapping her. This girl is very strange, but just then there was a hurried knocking on the door outside. How could Sister May make such a loud noise when changing clothes? But at this moment, she had already been covered by Sister Na's mouth, and Chen realized the danger of a broken tooth. Without hesitation, he immediately kicked open the door. Sister Na thought it was from the logistics department, but said calmly, "I'm looking for death." The person looked at Chen from the newsroom, but he didn't move. Instead, Shanwei quickly stood in front of Chen and said, "Chen, be careful." Upon hearing Chen's name, Naji's face immediately changed. Why did he come? Upon closer inspection, it was the killer Chen who was so scared that he opened his mouth. Chen was the one who shot down the black chef at the technical school. He was not really a human, but a ghost who didn't blink when killing. But now my intuition suggests that if I were to hit him today, I would die. It seems like I need to do something today. Without hesitation, he knelt in front of Chen and said, "That's too strange." At this moment, Sister Na wagged her tail in front of Chen like a female dog begging, "Please punish me." Upon hearing this, Shanwei felt vague. Is he called Master Chen? Faced with this, Chen said coldly, "Who is your master?" In other places, a mutated big mouse finally appeared in the end of the world, but in Chen's eyes, it was just a bigger mouse than usual, and with a slap, it knocked the mutated mouse's head off. Next, he had to face dozens of much larger mutant mice. Just now, Sister Na thought to herself, "Does the master think I'm not sincere enough?" Without saying a word, she took off her clothes. That's just one master. Xianwei and the others immediately stood up. Is Chen having such a strong appetite now? But at that moment, Sister Na's eyes suddenly lit up, and then a smoke bomb exploded, flooding the entire room with smoke. But just 1 second later, Chen caught his opponent. "Don't you think this is something you can escape from?" Upon hearing this news, Najie's eyes widened. "Wait, you can't kill me. Do you remember the girl you saved? She and her 2 brothers were taken to the arena. If you kill me?" Chen just sneered. "So what's?" As he spoke, he immediately threw the other person into the surging water. Seeing this, the moon asked in confusion, "Who are you talking about?" Miao Puyuan replied, "It's Xiaomei and her 2 brothers. If we don't save them, they will definitely be bitten to death by those big mice." Hearing about the big mice, Chen suddenly became excited. "Take me to see." The new moon next to him immediately reminded Chen to stay calm and try to avoid conflicts. Because the 2 brothers did not complete the mission according to the rules of the evolution base, they will be sentenced to death. But if you are willing to enter the arena, I can consider giving you a chance. Seeing this, the 2 brothers immediately advised Xiaomei not to believe him, but Captain Guo said it's too late to leave now. At this moment, Xiaomei naively asked, "Do you really want to let go of your brother?" Guo laughed, "Of course, but the condition was that you had to survive." After speaking, the cage door of the arena slowly opened, and a big mouse with red eyes appeared behind Xiaomei, making a squeaking sound. Xiaomei on the field trembled uncontrollably, but she accepted as long as she could save her brother. Suddenly, the big mouse opened its stinky mouth and tightly bit Xiaomei's arm. Soon, Xiaomei was lifted up by it, and she remembered the moments she had with her brother. Even if it was a poisonous mushroom, she wanted her brother to try it first. "Oh my God, there are many big mice, Xiaomei. When we complete the task and receive the reward, we won't let you go hungry. Remember, wait for us at the base." Captain Guo didn't care much. His mother shut up and said a word. His lower arm kicked a stake off their feet, and they were immediately suspended in the air. She waved the stick in her hand and fiercely poked the big mouse in the eye. The mouse cried out in pain to Xiaomei. Even though she was injured, she ran out towards her brother. "Come on, I'll save you." But the big mouse followed him and slapped Xiaomei on the back. Seeing this scene, Captain Guo immediately burst into laughter. The little one also wanted to save people. "You really shouldn't have survived." At this moment, Xiaomei had already been pinned to the ground by the big mouse, and her brother had only 1 breath left. Xiaomei could only cry loudly, wondering who could save us. But in a moment of desperation, Chen finally arrived and hit the big mouse hard on the head. When he became the first empty mouse, Xianyue felt something was wrong. This child was too impulsive. Captain Guo also showed a surprised expression, but Chu Chen didn't notice at all. That's all. It turned out to be just a bigger mouse than usual, no different from other mutant creatures. Seeing this, Captain Guo smirked slyly. Little one, if you want to die, the arena door opens again, revealing several even bigger mutant mice. Chu Chen just stood still. That's not enough. I want to fight 10, and then the boss behind the evolution base appeared. Just as Chu Chen knocked down the big mouse, the boss ordered Xianyue and Captain Guo. Bringing this experiment to me doesn't matter whether it's life or death, because Chu Chen's body can solve the problem of genetic instability in the end of the world. Hearing this secret, both of them have different faces. Xianyue, after a struggle, decided to stand with Chu Chen. Whoever dares to touch my brother today, I will fight him. At the same time, Xianyue and Duanyue will soon arrive. Xiaomei was worried and asked her brother if you were okay. Thank you, Xiaomei. If it weren't for me, I would have died. However, Xiaomei explained softly that it wasn't me, but brother Chu Chen, who saved you all, is the man below the special research material you mentioned. Sister Na confirmed that his older brother can definitely solve the problem of genetic instability in the end of the world with his genes. These mice have used the latest technology that is larger and more powerful than before. If they die inside, it is not worth using as material for our research. Sothun froze in a flawless pose. Tinwit stood there, stunned. Is this truly the Sothun we know? Captain Quach couldn't believe his eyes either. This was impossible, yet for Sothun it was merely a routine maneuver. What a pity, there were no surprises. Suddenly, the loudspeaker blared across the arena. Attention, everyone. This man is the very specimen I require for my experiments. Captain Quach, take him to me at once. Upon hearing this, the faces of both men changed dramatically. Captain Quach was elated. Big brother has spoken, your time is up. Tinwit instantly grasped the dire situation, realizing it was a matter of life and death. Recognizing the impending danger, Miao Puyuan quickly urged, Duanguit, you must leave now. If you don't, you'll be trapped here too. Duanguit resolutely replied, I won't leave. As long as Sothun is here, I'm staying. At that moment, Captain Quach grew even more aggressive. Tinguit, I've heard you two are brothers, yet it's only thanks to Big Brother that you've survived this apocalypse. So, what will you choose? Hearing this, Sothun raised an eyebrow in confusion. Tinwit, what's going on? Tinwit slowly explained, the man upstairs is Luhan Nin. He was the one who developed the drug that grants immense power when the apocalypse began, allowing him to dominate the academy. However, this drug drains vitality in exchange for strength. If one stops taking it, they become weaker than anyone else. Yet Sothun merely smiled. Tinwit, what if I told you I have a way? Would you follow me? I'm sorry, Sothun, but I might have no other choice. As soon as he finished speaking, Captain Quach laughed maniacally. Who would have thought I'd witnessed two brothers betray each other today? Time is running out, Tinguit shouted as she wielded her meteor hammer, charging towards Sothun. Big Brother is waiting for us above, but suddenly, a surge of powerful energy weighed down on Captain Quach. But today, I no longer want to choose, and with that, he forcefully stomped on Captain Quach's face. Instantly, Captain Quach was sent flying, standing straight before him. Seeing this, Captain Quach fumed. Tinguit, are you betraying me? Yet Tinguit merely scoffed. Big Brother just wants to use the drug to control my father. My life is nothing but a shell. If death is what awaits, then let it come poor. The furious roar of Sothun echoed through the air. Indeed, he was still the one who understood me like no other, sweet and familiar as before. At this moment, Captain Quach also stood up, ready for the confrontation. If you have chosen death, then I will shatter both of you. The fierce glare of Tianyue remained unyielding. You are still far from being strong enough. With that, he delivered a crushing punch to Captain Guo, rendering him unable to open his eyes. Surprisingly, Captain Guo did not respond with anger, but instead smiled at his elder brother. I knew one day you would betray him, so I administered the first-tier drug to you. Meanwhile, I used the second tier. Upon hearing this, Tinguit was taken aback. The second tier, my essence is the ultimate defense. Here, no one can harm me. With that, he swung two meteor hammers directly at Tinguit. Witnessing this, Tianyu quickly raised both hands to block the blow, but Captain Guo's strength was overwhelming, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. Captain Guo laughed heartily. Tianyue, you must be filled with regret. Now, prepare to meet your end. Tianyue still wished to resist, but soon felt his fingertips go numb. This is bad. The hammer is electrified. It seemed that today, Tianyue would meet his demise here, but just at that critical moment, Shuo Chen kicked the meteor hammer away and struck Captain Guo's face with a powerful blow. The force of the impact sent him crashing to the ground. Did you not claim that no one could harm you? Seeing this, Tianyue was immediately taken aback. Duan Yue and Miao Pu Yuan also wore expressions of astonishment, not expecting Shuo Chen to have become this formidable. Meanwhile, Lu Hanwen, the elder brother, remained emotionless, as if everything was perfectly within his control.